Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and welcome to the latest episode of the Hard Compound Live. For those of you who don't know, my name is Rich and I run and operate the Hard Compound, one-stop shop for all things motorsport on Facebook, Twitter, and on Instagram. We put out 2 or 3 posts a day. These are in the form of race reviews, race previews, any car or bike liveries, birthdays, throwbacks, any breaking news that we can squeeze onto the page. We try and get on there as quickly as we can. As I said, this is on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. We also have a YouTube channel we use solely for these live interviews, which, in case you hadn't noticed, we are doing one this evening. This is streamed on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube only. But do give us a search for the Hard Compound: Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Instagram. Give us a follow. Hit the notification bell, and do in 2 or 3 times a day so you don't miss out on all the good motorsport stuff that we have for you. The live video interviews are recorded instantaneously and can be watched back on our Facebook and on our YouTube, in the video section on Facebook and the live section on YouTube. We've had quite a few guests on. This is number 103 or 4, I believe. I'm not going to name them all. You'd be glad to know, but a number of guests from across the motorsport spectrum for you to go and check out and watch back at your leisure. We've just last week we had the pleasure of speaking with Mr. Brian Redman, absolute legend, wonderful driver, lovely guy. Fantastic to speak with him. We've also had the honour and the privilege of speaking with Mr. Mario Andretti, with John Watson, with Mr. Jackie Ix. We had like Mike Wilds on earlier. We've also spoken with the likes of we've had like Karen Chandhocker's come on. We've had Martin Donnelly. We've had Perry McCarthy, Mark Blundell, Ari Lyondike, Carl Wendlinger, Danny Sullivan, Alex Palou, Brian Herter, Scott Pruitt, Catherine Legg, Alonso Jr., Derek Warwick, Stephanie Hansen, David Brabham, Eddie Cheever, Emanuele Pirro, Mika Salo, like Nico Prost, Freddie Hunt. But if you're tuning in tonight, you're probably a fan of the touring cars. We've had some of the touring car legends have come to speak with us, the likes of like John Cleland, Steve Soper, Rob Rabbit, Frank Sittner. We've spoken with that more. And we've had a number of the current grid coming for a chat as well, the likes of like Jake Hill and Tom Chilton. We spoke with like Rick Parfitt and with like Michael Crease, Chris Smiley, Jade Edwards, many others. So do go and check those out as and when you get time, but don't do it just yet because we have got a fantastic guest joining us right now, fresh on the back of a very strong weekend at Croft with the Napa Racing team. And one of the very top drivers in the UK. So without any further ado, we're going to bring him in right now. Please join me in extending a very warm welcome to Dan Cammish.
Good evening.
And there he is. Dan, how are you?
Very well. How are you?
Yes, not too bad. That intro keeps getting longer. I need to trim it a bit.
It was very good.
It's I do have a list off camera. I'm not doing it from memory.
It's a good list as well. I'm happy to be joining that list, I must say.
Well, I mean, it's great to have you on. I mean, I've been wanting to speak to you and to get you on for a while, but obviously, you've been busy with life stuff and and like a relatively new team, and I didn't think you'd want to come on and have a chat, to be honest. So that's why I grabbed you at Media Day. So thank you very much. Thank you very much for coming on and having a chat this evening. It's obviously very much appreciated. Right, well, I mean, firstly, before we get cracking, just want to turn my attention quickly to the comment section. Hello, folks. We've got lots of people commenting already. Simon Steele, Mark O'Neill, Matthew Clark. Who else have we got? We have got John Kane. He's a marshal at Knock Hill. He's going to be a busy boy this weekend. Hoppers Motorsport Vlogs, Dave Chambers, and many others. Hello, folks. If you have any questions or comments, do put them in the comment section, and we'll do our best to work them into this chat. I think that's the intro done. Right. Lisa Reinhard. Hello, Lisa. She said that she saw you at Croft. Obviously, a highlight of her weekend. So there you go. Fantastic. Right. That's all the rambling and long intro all done. Firstly, congratulations from everyone tuning in and from all the BTCC fans for a very strong weekend for you and for the team at Croft. It all went rather well, didn't it?
It did. Great weekend for not only myself. Yorkshire born to go my first ever pole and win in touring cars in Yorkshire. So that was a personal highlight. But for the team as a whole, it was an amazing weekend. 1, 2, 3 in qualifying, and then 1, 2, 3 in the first 2 races. I mean, we were really loving the day, and certainly we don't take those days for granted. They were days like that are rare, and we know that.
Yeah, absolutely. And to do it once is impressive. Well, to do it in qualifying is impressive. Race 1 and to do it in race 2 as well. I mean, I don't think I've seen that before. Certainly not for a long time.
Yeah, we had a quick.
It was an amazing thing to see.
We'd have a quick look, and we're not sure if anyone has done it twice on the bounce. It's certainly been done once. We're just not sure if anyone's repeated it 1, 2, 3 in the second one. I'll have to try and get clarification on that to see if that was actually a BTCC first.
Yeah, and it kind of feels like it is. I think it would have been brought up if it had been done before. But no, absolutely fantastic. I mean, we'll come to the current season shortly. Just very quickly before we move on onto the usual question of how you started. I think it's important to mention that you guys at like Napa Racing, you're going to be doing some fundraising stuff for the Race for Dementia, which is obviously founded by like Jackie Stewart. So everyone stay tuned to the Napa socials, because it's a fantastic cause, isn't it?
It is indeed, yeah. No, and we've got quite a lot going on over the weekend at Knockhill. Quite a lot of stuff to get involved in, ways to donate. And yeah, should be some quite exciting stuff happening up there actually. So definitely keep following the Napa socials, and yeah, you'll have to wait and see what we have in store.
Fantastic! I'm looking forward to it. And so, I mean, I think a lot of people have been affected, with like dementia, whether it's with like friends and family and things like that. So it's a fantastic cause, and so two thumbs up from everyone, for Napa for getting involved with it. Right, I guess. I mean, we have to start right back at the start. That's always a good place to begin these chats. Where did your interest in like motorsport come from? Because you're from Leeds, Yorkshire. Obviously, there's lots of different sports get played around there. You've got football and rugby league and everything else. What was it about motorsport that caught your eye?
To be honest, it was my dad that really got me into it. He was a big motorsport fan growing up. He bought Autosport magazine every week. He was just a real fan of Formula One and all motorsport. But he never really got a chance to try it himself. About the time I was born, he tried a bit of karting, but it was always going to be difficult when you got a newborn. And unfortunately, that was kind of as far as it went, really. A few outings here and there with my uncle at the time. They both did it together, and then once I was old enough, sort of 7, 8 years old, my dad couldn't wait to let me have a go. So we got a car and off we went. And what a lot of people probably don't know about my early career was that I actually got out of it again. I started at 8, but I actually got out of it quite quickly. I was okay on my own. I liked I liked the driving bit, and I was quite quick on my own, but I didn't particularly enjoy the racing.
Right.
When you see
like a fun, was like just like a fun thing to begin with, almost.
Yeah. I mean, I was racing from early on, from 8, but I didn't enjoy the racing part of it. Quite frankly, I think it probably scared me a little bit at that age. I mean, when you see some of these kids at 8 years old, how talented they are and fearless, amazing. And it just wasn't me. Like I say, on my own, on the track, I could turn a decent lap and I enjoyed it, but I didn't particularly enjoy the racing. So I got out of it, went to play football for a few years, not very well, admittedly. And luckily, when I was my 12th birthday, I went indoor karting for my birthday, and I must have remembered something, because I think I lapped my friends 2 or 3 times, and my dad said, "Would you like another go?" And I said, "Actually, yeah, I think I would." And
wow.
It must have been less than a week until he had another go-kart in the garage, and he was outside tinkering. He couldn't wait to get back started, and that was 20 years ago. This year, this is my 20th consecutive year of motorsport, so quite a milestone for me. But yeah, that's how it started, and not really looked back since.
Yeah, I think you're probably the first person of all the people we've spoken to that sort of tried it, stepped away, and then came back to it at such a young age. Because obviously, when you're at a young age, you try loads of different things. And I can remember trying all kinds of different nonsensey things when I was, when I was young, and don't think I ever really came back to any of them. So I think everyone's very glad that you did. And I mean, you mentioned it was like within that week the kart was back in the garage and it was being worked on. How long did it take from there to thinking, oh, I'm going to go and compete again?
I think the idea was always to compete. I think my dad always wanted me to compete in motorsport. It was never, don't get me wrong. If I'd have turned around and said, I don't want to, I just want to purely go with you and have some fun and drive around in circles, he would have totally supported that. But for him, it was always the competition, and it probably wasn't long. I mean, I remember it very well. I was at Warden Law. We'd bought a 100cc go-kart, the type without a clutch, so you had to push it and jump in. I didn't jump in my first go. My dad just picked it up and ran with it. And and I got to the first turn and I span at the first turn. And I remember he came running out to get me and he said, "I'm not doing this all day." And I was like, "Yeah, agreed. I won't do that again." And off we went. So no, I don't think it was too long. I think that'll have been sort of early 2003, I think, and I think I was racing by like September at Wigan, Manchester and Buxton Kart Club back then, and off I went on my novice plates. And yeah, it's seems a long time ago, but some great memories from the early days.
Yeah, fantastic, and and it's such a good proving ground. And so many have come through from karts and have gone through, from karts and through the junior formula. I think I've mentioned this before. The best one that stands out for me was Rick Parfitt Jr. I spoke with him a couple of years ago, just after he joined the BTCC, and he said that he learned to race racing lawnmowers against the members of Queen, which
is
pretty
different.
good way to start, isn't it? I mean,
yeah, it's not the traditional route.
No, I think he might be the only one.
Yeah, I would say so.
So, and you mentioned you were at the Manchester and Buxton Kart Club, and I think I've from my research I've got here that you finished 20th overall that first year. But obviously, it sounds like it was just like a little part season. And again, it just says that you went through the Kart Masters British Grand Prix Super Libre, Super One National Formula A Championship, and the Super One National Rotax Max Championships. God, they don't make it easy to say, do they?
No.
But you obviously just like progressed, obviously with age, and I guess with like your results as well. I guess you had a bit of success in the karting as well.
Yeah, I did. Like you say, sort of those early days, I didn't really do a full season of any kart championship for a little while. We would sort of pick and choose, from Wigan, Manchester Buxton Kart Club, to Wunwell, Barnsley. I would go to every month or every other month. Sometimes GYG in North Wales we kind of picked and choose where we would race, not really venturing to PF, which is where Kart Masters is. That's kind of the main kart track in the country. We kind of stayed away from that in the early days because it was they are all British Championship level sort of drivers. So yeah, we kind of picked and chose, but we were out quite often, at least once a month, if not twice, and then just year by year get a bit more confident. I think I did 2003 was my first sort of part season. 2004, I think I did most of the season at MBKC in Wigan, and sort of worked myself towards the front of the grid regularly. And I think once you're towards the front of the grid in your local club, you can start to think about the national series, sort of
Sure.
British Championships. And yeah, my first season of Super One was 2005. And I remember I turned up it was Clay Pigeon. There was a C final. I know there was because I won it. So I'd gone from being a top front runner, won a race or two, and certainly been on the podium many times at my local club, to being literally 50 karts back in the British Championship. And that was at a time when karting was it was really healthy. You know, when I joined in 2003, I remember there were 5 or 6 novices on each grid. And you know, in my later years when I was getting out of it and into cars, it was quite rare you'd ever see a novice, which kind of just shows really maybe the popularity of it. But yeah, my first Super One, I remember there was so many drivers, you know, 70 or 80 guys, all at British Championships, and like you say, slowly I sort of worked myself forwards, and eventually finishing in my karting career came to an end in 2008. I finished 4th in the British Championships in senior Rotax, and I finished 6th in the European Championship. So I had a bit of success, but I was always quite tall for karting. Yeah, didn't really find, I would say, real success until I got into a car, for sure.
Yeah, sure. I mean, you mentioned the like European side of things. Obviously, about 18 months ago, we had the karting man, Mr. Terry Fullerton, came on and had a chat, and he said that he used to love racing out in Europe because he said that they took it so much more seriously, and it was nice to go and win. But he said that when he was racing out in Europe, I mean, he mentioned the likes of obviously Ayrton Senna and Riccardo Patrese and these guys. But he said that when he came back to the UK, he found that he was a much better driver for a number of reasons. I mean, did you find that when you raced?
I mean, yeah. I mean, it teaches you a heck of a lot, and the level in Europe, of course, is going to be ever so slightly higher than in Britain. I mean, Britain is very much kind of a home of motorsport. We're very good at it.
Yeah.
We are super competitive. I'm sure it's it's not coincidence that a lot of the Formula One teams are based here. It's not a coincidence that we have such a fantastic driver lineup, no matter where you go in what series. And you know, you look at some of the kart teams we have; they're some of the best in the world, and there's a reason for that. And yeah, like we would go out to Europe, and I would race some of the same guys from the UK, but obviously I'd come up against all the best guys from Europe as well. And yeah, you could take that back to your local. What you'd learn, you'd take back home. But for sure, you know, the European kart tracks tend to be of just a higher level. The weather obviously is different. Can be super hot, super sticky tires. It's an incredible level. You know, I did sort of the Rotax side of it, which was great. I enjoyed it, but I never did sort of the full CIK FIA level, which is just altogether an incredible level of motorsport. I mean, it's not even really, you know, it is, of course, it's a feeder to cars, and it always will be, but it doesn't have to be. You know, there's a lot of guys in that are professional kart drivers. You know, they're paid to do a job. You know, you watch a kart race at that level, and it's some of the best motorsport you'll ever watch. It's the teams and the infrastructure and the level that you're talking about is probably not seen again until you get very high up the single seat ladder. You know, bordering on sort of F2 level. You know, some of these teams have 3 or 4 chassis per driver. They've got enough equipment to sink a touring car team. Put it that way.
Yeah, it's like it's a proper setup they have. Excuse me. Just a couple of things on the karting before we move on. Where are we? Andy Hopley from Hopper's Motorsport Vlogs, Ethan Hoppers. He said, very opportune time to ask a question. He said, is there any drivers from karting that you considered a rival at the time? Was there somebody you thought, I've got to beat him?
My teammate at the time, in my final year, 2008, my teammate was Chris Locke, who was a very talented karter. I think he was world champion that year. He was European champion, and he was British champion. He was about as good as it got, actually, in Rotax terms. And he was my teammate. So I kind of had a very good... It was my first year in Rotax. I had someone very good to learn off. I beat him occasionally, which was obviously super sweet. But mainly he had the upper hand, and deservedly so, after he'd been in it a few years and come close before to British and the European Championship. So, no, he was really good. There's a few guys, you know, Luke Varley also went on to be world champion. He's a good friend of mine. He no longer races, but he was really successful. From my early days, I raced loads of guys. You know, Jack Hawksworth, we both raced at Woolwell together. I remember, in the really early days, we're talking back when we were novices. Both from a similar parts of Yorkshire, and now he's off doing the sort of the IMSA stuff and racing. I think he races with Ben Barnico now out in America, so he's doing super well.
I think he's with Lexus. Is
he is with Lexus, yeah. So there's loads of guys actually that have sort of gone on to have pretty successful careers, which is quite nice actually.
Yeah, it's great. It just shows what a good proving ground it is. Got a few questions coming in about the focus and everything else, and we are going to come to that, folks. Do stick with us. We are going to progress forward. Very quick with karting, it feels like a few people have said it's getting very expensive. I mean, do you think it's starting to price people out of it? Perhaps. Or does it depend where you go?
It does, of course. I mean, it certainly is an expensive sport. It's not. Unfortunately, it doesn't have the reach, and it's never going to be as accessible as some sports. And I think you've got to have some. It's one of those sports that you don't really stumble upon. I think you've got to have, like, for me, it was my father who obviously sort of had an interest and showed me it. I think you need someone who can kind of take you into it. You're not going to pick it up it's not something you're going to pick up just on the way, sort of thing. And yeah, I do hear some astronomical figures of what it costs now to race at the very highest level. Basically what it costs to race a car, to be honest. At a very high level. So the numbers have gone a bit crazy, but I still think there's, at the other end of that, I still think there's very much a dad and lad, as we call it. There's no reason why people shouldn't be giving it a go. With a van and trailer, turning up and paying the dues and enjoying the motorsport, which is how I started and how many people still start. And it can be as expensive or inexpensive as you try and make it. Obviously, there is. What I will say about motorsport, more than any other sport, is probably there is a link between money and success in a way. Obviously, the more investment you have, the more time you can spend doing it, and the more successful you might become off the back of it, which is no different to many sports, but in motorsport, it's just more easy to see a link, really.
Yeah. Maybe not necessarily direct to success, but to the road to success, I guess, isn't it? It's
absolutely
getting onto it, but. Do not be put off, kids out there.
No, absolutely not. You surely shouldn't be. I know, the rise of sim racing, for example. I know a lot of people say, well, I'm just going to do this instead, and I think that's a shame. And I do hope that, because there's a lot more to it than just the driving. I've some of my best friends came from kart tracks, from teams, from people that I grew up with and spent a lot of time with. I had some fantastic memories, and I'm not sure you get the same memories sat in a bedroom, to be honest. Even though I do enjoy sim racing, I still think real motorsport is certainly has its place.
Yeah, I guess part of it is going out in the van and or hooking the trailer up and having a weekend and that whole experience. Yeah. One final thing on karting. Rebecca Ridgard. Hello, Rebecca. She said, has the female contingent within karting increased? Good question. It seems to have done.
Good question. Certainly, I mean, personally wouldn't know anymore. It's been a while since I was at kart tracks. Some of my friends are still involved. My old boss, an engine builder, so I used to work in karting, but there were some good female karters when I was coming up. I wouldn't know now who the top sort of female drivers were, but hopefully, I think it's it's sport for any gender as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, definitely, and this across all levels. Certainly around the UK in touring cars, there's like females getting involved in racing, which is fantastic to see. Right, fantastic. I mean, so you've done the karting and you've had some success. I guess the thoughts were always cars. That was like the natural progression. Was it a case of, do we continue with karting or do we go to cars? Or
no, I mean, I'll be honest, like cars, I don't remember ever cars been the. I don't ever really remember thinking cars was the progression. I actually wanted to be a pro kart driver. That was my sort of dream when I was younger. That was my aspiration, was to get into Europe and drive for Tony Kart or Birrell and have a factory career, and that was enough. But as I say, I've always been quite tall, 6'2", and I feel like I've been 6'2" forever. So it's no coincidence that some of the top karters tend to be quite short, and they go on to be usually picked up, and that's why a lot of racing drivers tend to be, certainly at Formula 1 level, are surprisingly short when you meet them. Obviously, there's a few exceptions to that now. People like George Russell is about my height.
Yeah.
The problem with me is that I'm all leg, and I proved this the other day. We were chatting. Me and Ash were talking, and because Ash he's not short. I think he's like 5'11" or something. And I stood next to him and I said, "Look, I showed him where my hip bone was," and he was like, "Oh my god! Like I've got no body. I'm all leg." So it makes it particularly difficult, especially in Europe, to have that height, because you create a lot of side bite, especially when you're in really warm conditions on very sticky tyres. So cut a long story short, I did one race at the end of it was November 2008. I wanted to join a particular team that I couldn't get in, basically because they'd said that I was just too tall and I was going to create a lot of problems for them. And I was beaten in the final. It was actually by Luke Bartley. And like I say, we're good friends now, and I've joked about this with him before. He kind of ended my karting career because I watched him. I was leading the race, and this was at PF International, the main kart track. So these are like the main guys I've been racing all year. I was winning, he was behind, and he just joined this new team that I couldn't get in, and off he went. They sort of gave him the signal. He passed me and drove off into the distance, and I was well ahead of third. And I just remember thinking, I don't want a year of this.
Yeah, this is it.
And my dad said the same. He said, let's see what else we can get involved in. And I think that is when the car sort of idea came around. And yeah, Formula Ford was the next stop.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously, way back when I was a kid, during the war, Formula Ford was fantastic to watch. I remember, seeing. I can't think of any of the names now, but I remember right now was it? There was Formula Ford was a fantastic series to go to, and it doesn't quite get the coverage now that it should. But how did that move come about, going into Formula Ford? Because obviously there's the financial issues and everything else.
Yeah, I made. I have to remember actually, because he comes up later in my career. A guy called Chris Hodgson, and he'd come to a couple of my kart races, and he had an older Formula Ford, the 1600 type, that still races like the Walter Hayes and things like that. So it was that kind of car.
Yeah.
And he invited me to have a go at Silverstone, and it was teeming with rain. And I remember I put it in the gravel on like the second lap, and I remember sat in the gravel thinking, what am I doing? Like, I know nothing about driving with this. Bearing in mind I'd come from karting where the wet tire is incredibly grippy, but the slick is super grippy. I'd only ever known grip for the last few years of my karting career, so to have a tire that's got so little grip, especially in the wet, felt alien to me. Anyway, so that didn't go much further, but thankfully I did get a couple of tests in Formula Ford with Kevin Mills and with JTR. Not long, only I think a few months before Joe sadly passed away, but I did very well. I remember I did a test at Donington for Kevin Mills, and I think I was somewhere near where I needed to be to basically put the car on pole. And I remember him saying to me like that shouldn't really be possible, to have just turned up and do that. Wow. And obviously I had no idea about what a lap time should be or shouldn't be. This is my foray into it, and we ended up sort of agreeing to do a deal and join British Formula Ford, which is where my dad wanted me to start. He'd watched Formula Ford forever, a bit like what you were saying. Yeah. Everyone came through Formula Ford back in the day. It was a breeding ground for future success. And if you won the Formula Ford Festival at the end of the year at Brands Hatch, you were a superstar, and you were on your way to Formula One usually. By the time I got to Formula Ford, 2009, it was still very healthy. It was a British Championship. It sits where Formula 4 now sits on the Toka grid, on effectively in that, not on the package, but certainly in terms of the entry level into single seaters. Yeah. And it was fantastic. We had some great drivers on the grid, including Joseph Newgarden, who's a two-time IndyCar champ now. So it was a real talented grid.
Yeah, I mean, I saw that in my notes actually when I was doing the research. I thought, who was I know? anyone who's seen this knows I'm a huge IndyCar fan, and Team Penske are my team. They always have been since I saw Rick Mears win the 500 in '88. So yeah, I'm not going to lie, I was jumping around the living room when when he won the 500. But as I mean, it was a heck of a grid.
It was a great grid. Yeah,
it was a heck of a grid. I mean, I think he came in one of the years. I think Joseph came second, and I think it was your first year.
It was the first year. Yeah, he came second to James Cole.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, did you? I mean, did you ever sort of get to hang out with Joseph Newgarden, or did you ever sort of think he is good? I mean, you know, was there anyone at that time who you thought could go on?
Yeah, you knew Joseph was good, like super talented. He'd come from he'd done a year in America already, I think in like US 1600 type. So a little bit like I presume like Walt Hayes, let's say the older sort of Formula Fords are. So he was already very good. He was a year ahead of me at least in terms of sort of cars. But what shone out of everything was his personality. I mean, he was a Texas lad, and just his personality. Even then he was only young, but he could speak to camera. He was like nobody else I'd ever really met. He was brilliant in front of camera, and just had this personality about him and positivity that was almost infectious. And he was super talented. So I remember thinking, and chatting with my dad, that if anyone was destined to be a star, it was him. He didn't quite make it in Europe. He did do some GP3, which is known as F3 now, but GP3, and had limited success, but obviously really hit it big once he got back to America, and now he's an absolute superstar, and deservedly so.
Yeah, absolutely, and he's the king of the oval at the moment. Was it 5?
He is 5 on the bounce, isn't it? I think
5 in a row. 5 on the bounce. Yeah. He's gonna have some fun at Nashville this weekend. If he gets to the finish, goodness me, he'll be doing well, because that's a crazy place. But yeah, I mean, when you got into Formula Ford, you've done the deal. Obviously, you perhaps surprised yourself a bit. Did you have any expectations? Because you were in the scholarship. You were in line for the scholarship honours the first year.
Yeah.
And everything.
Yeah.
Did you have any expectations or hopes or thoughts going into that first year?
Not really. I remember being quite surprised, and to this day, I still, I'm not entirely sure what happened. You do hear stories of, obviously, in testing, is everyone running legal? You can obviously run underweight, especially when the cars already weigh so little. Is everyone running a championship sort of spec in testing? And during testing, I don't think we ever really looked like troubling the top 7 or 8, at least from memory. It's a long time ago. And I remember, obviously, the scholarship class was you race in the same race. The cars are the same. It's a little bit like the Jack Sears. It's for those that haven't been in a championship before. So you score points overall still. So obviously the overall was what I was really focused on, but the scholarship also. And the first qualifying, I qualified second on my debut. And to this day, I think if you actually, Kevin Turner, on my Kevin Turner I met back then, he actually said I was the first person to do that apparently since Senna did it on his debut in British Formula Ford. So it's quite a statement. And Kevin Turner wrote that in Autosport. So my debut went pretty well. I finished on the podium. I think just behind James and Joseph, and I had this dream start. But I remember qualifying. It kind of came out of nowhere. It was like, where did that come from? Yeah. And then at the second race, I put it on pole. So my career got off to a great start. And then I got probably, I would say, maybe slightly ahead of myself. Actually, looking back, I mean, the problem is when you do that is that you start to you want that, you expect that. Anything that's not that is a disappointment, and feels like you've underperformed. And I had so much learning to do. I was just a rookie. I still had a novice cross on the back till race 6. There's a great picture of me at Rockingham on pole with a novice cross on the back. Bearing in mind that there's people behind me that far more races under the belt than me. So
and they certainly don't have the cross on them. Yeah.
No. So I was way too hard on myself looking back. But what I will, when I look back now, I also know that I didn't get into a car till I was 20 years old.
Right.
I didn't really have a lot of time to waste, in terms of trying to make an impact. And one thing I never had, that the learning year that you hear, I used to hear it thrown around so much when I was coming up. Oh, this guy's, it's his first year and he's having a learning year. And you talk about the finances. I never had a learning year because the finances didn't stretch to year 2. I had to deliver year 1, otherwise there was no year 2.
Right.
So I put a lot of pressure on myself back then, and sometimes certainly suffered from that. But there's no doubt the start of my career was pretty successful.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, take a podium on your in your first ever race as well.
Yeah, it was.
As you say, fantastic start. I mean, again, just from looking back over it, I've got here from the 23 races, you took 17 class wins, 22 class podiums, 19 class fastest laps, and 12 class poles. I mean, that is a good start.
Yeah.
And you was it 6th overall? You had a couple of podiums in there.
I think 6th overall, yeah. Which was not too bad, really. As I say, I ended up going to. I ended up doing a few races in Germany. I got contacted by a German team to do a series called Formula ADAC.
Oh yeah.
Which back then I think Daniel Abt won it that year.
Okay.
And yeah, I mean, I thought I was off. I really thought this is it. I'm gonna make it. I've been my first year, and here I am in Germany racing for a team that, has called me up out of the blue, and is only asking me to sort of cover a few expenses here and there. I thought this is it. And yeah, to finish 6th with quite a few incidents and accidents along the way, was not a bad effort, to be fair.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, very, very strong. You were into you went back into Formula Ford for the second year, with the same team, but after 2 rounds, you switched to JTR, excuse me.
Yeah.
Like Joe Tandy Racing.
Yeah.
What brought that switch around?
Yeah, I was racing with Kevin Mills, who great guy, Kevin, and still runs a GB4 team now for his boy and others. And I think they're going to win the GB4 championship actually this year. So they're doing very well. But we ran the Spectrum chassis, which was an Australian built car, and it just didn't have the performance of the Mygal, which is what Jamin ran and JTR. And I was kind of there was a guy called Daniel Eriksson who raced in 2009. He was an Australian. He had no real better results than me. I think he did win a race at Donington, but other than that, not much. And he was a very experienced guy as well. So 2010, I spent a bit of time in Australia, went out there to try and develop the car a bit more and hoping to make a difference. And to be honest, when we came back and got going, we just couldn't quite take the fight to the Jamin and of the Mygal that Jamin had. Scott Pye won it that year.
Yeah.
So we made a decision to try and switch. I don't know if it was mid-season or maybe a bit earlier, like you said. Got in it, and I won on my first time in it. I won at Zandvoort, which was quite cool to win and then quickly be on the beach not long after. So.
Yeah, cause it's just over the dunes, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah. I've never actually seen racing at Zandvoort. I went to the MotoGP at Assen and I stopped in at Zandvoort on the way home. And I thought it'd be great to watch it, and it must be even better to drive, especially now
it's a great circuit. It's absolutely brilliant circuit. Yeah.
It's a proper old school. Very quick. You mentioned Scott Pye. Obviously, he's now in doing supercars.
He is.
Shannon Supercar Showdown. We're going to come on to that very shortly. So your first ever race with the team, you won at Zandvoort, and then a bit later on the year, you took your first home win, as it were, at Donington. Must be nice to sort of win, your first outright car race at home. Must be nice.
Yes, yeah, of course, absolutely. I think you do remember those ones. I think winning outright was certainly something that I was looking forward to, and it was a big moment, to win outright, stand on the podium.
Yeah,
good memories.
Yeah, excellent.
I will
And
quickly turn the light on, actually.
yeah, no problem, no problem. Hello, folks. I am seeing the questions, guys. I am going to pop.
Losing the light. There we go.
Yeah, there we are. We are going to come to the questions, guys. I can see them all. Don't worry. We're going to get to them. So yeah, you finished third overall that year.
Yeah.
Which I guess you were happy with. But was it again time to move on? Were you thinking about moving up
Yeah,
the ladder at
and
that point?
should have moved on at the end of 2009 actually, and in 2009 the tire was the Avon, and it had a real peak to it. So basically, you would have an out lap, and then the next flying lap was like had to be the one because it had a real peak and a drop.
Right.
2010 we went to a Dunlop, and honestly, it was rock hard. Talk about the hard compound. That was it. Every lap was the same, and it didn't really suit me, to be honest. I much prefer a peaky tire. To be honest, my whole career has kind of been better on tires that have degrade, and you have to get the best out of it early, and that just wasn't it. And when you can drive around for 10, 15 laps, and on the 15th lap, eventually that's the time, just didn't really play to my strengths. So we should have really got out of it at the end of 2009, but hindsight's a wonderful thing. 2010, obviously, finished third, and then I think at this point it was like, where do we go? The finances. I've never been great at finding sponsorship. I'm not great at it. I'm thankful for the sponsors I do have, the personal sponsors. They're great, and I do try my best. But there's some guys out there that are particularly good at the sponsorship side. It was never really my forte. Thankfully, I've been quite good at the actual driving bit. But yeah, early on I didn't really know where to go, so I ended up doing a part season of Formula Renault because we just couldn't find the budget. I really needed help it was Mark Burdett Motorsport back then. He did me a great deal to get on the grid from, I can't remember where from. I can't remember how many rounds I did. Maybe I did 6 of the 10 or 5 of 8. I can't remember, but it was without someone like Mark, and there's a few people like that throughout my career that really helped me and kept me going, because without them, I would have been watching a long time ago.
Yeah, sure. And I mean, we hear that a lot. I mean, there's a few people have got that, and then I met so and so, and things took off. And as you've alluded to, there's obviously 2 or 3 that have come on board at different times that have obviously helped you out. In the Formula Renault, was that your first time in a full on wing aero?
No, it was.
But you did pretty well.
I did do well, actually. Looking back now, again, it was one of those times where I didn't really know. I look back now and think I did very well, and probably shouldn't have put the pressure on myself to perform like I did, but I didn't know any other way. I was part of the Mark Burdett team with Jack Hawksworth, actually, for part of that season until Jack left, and then I was actually on my own. And I think I had 3 podiums in the last 3 rounds, I think. And this is, I remember, this was up against like Fortec and people when they were like 3 and 4 car teams with people like Alex Lynn and Oliver Rowland, and they had real talented guys that have gone on to be super successful. And there I was in my one.
Obviously, Alex won his class at Le Mans this year and all that.
Yeah. Oh no, he's I think he's now a prototype driver, isn't he? In like the DPI type stuff. He's been super successful. Oliver Rowland now in Formula E. They've all done very well. So looking back, me getting on the podium against these guys in a 1-car team was a great effort. And it's stuff like that kind of kept me going, really. And thankfully that every time I thought, where do I turn next, someone give me another chance. Which is obviously what my career was kind of originally kind of built on, really.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, just from looking at it, I mean, I said you took 4 podiums that year, 1 at Brands and 3 at Silverstone over a couple of rounds. So, and you say against that kind of caliber of grid, you can't really knock it. It's all good. One thing I did see that I didn't know about until I started doing a bit of research here was you did some in the JK Racing Asia series
Mm.
out at Sepang, which people may not know this, or they might do. I love bike racing as well, and Sepang looks absolutely awesome on a bike. What's it like to drive in a car?
Really good, brilliant circuit. Enjoyed it. I went over there with my uncle. He came with me. We had a bit of a trip, me and him. Another one. It was one of those weird moments in. I think all drivers have these where you just end up doing random things and having these. Now I have these memories. I got a phone call about it, and I said, yeah, I'll do it. And next minute, I'm in Malaysia driving at Sepang. It was a strange one, a one-off, but you meet all kinds of different people, and I can't remember the results. I think I finished fourth a few times. I can't really remember. I remember having.
Was it 4 races, wasn't it? It was 4 on one weekend or something like that.
Like that, yeah. And
Yeah.
I remember I've still got a picture somewhere on my phone of my hand. I was full of blisters from pulling the gear lever. Like all the skin had come off my hands. But I remember more than that, the seeing a bit of Kuala Lumpur was amazing. They had a roller coaster indoors. I remember being like, as if and they had 5G on trains, and that was like 10 years ago. Long before we had 5G in the UK. So
Yeah.
it was a cool place, and yeah, like I say, it was one of those one-offs. I think, like I say, a lot of drivers have done all these kind of things. Phone rings, and you jump at the opportunity.
Yeah, fantastic. What a great experience. And again, that's something you don't get from the sim racing, isn't it? You don't get to go there.
No, you don't. You don't get
do the travelling.
You don't get those sort of memories. I think I've eaten pizza in just about every every corner of the world, I think.
You're a man after my own heart. I love a pizza. Had that for dinner earlier. So obviously into 2012, into the Euro Cup Formula Renault. Obviously it's a bit of a sore point because people may or may not know what happened. But it seemed like it was all sort of starting to go, upwards, as it were. But then was it the first round at Aragon, wasn't it? You had a rather nasty shunt. I mean, as I said before, people that have seen these, I don't like talking about accidents, but they do seem to form big parts of people's career, especially Brian Redmond last week. I mean, honestly, he spent more time in hospital than he did on track, I think. But yeah, what happened? Because it sounded rather nasty.
It was nasty. Yeah, it was. It was one of those again. Like end of 2011. Where do we go? What can we do? What can we find the finances for? Nothing came up. Absolutely nothing that year. And it must have been a few days before the start of the Euro Cup season that I had a phone call from ATEC GP, who I'd raced against the year before, actually in the UK Championship. They ran TOLNS. Another guy who went on to be very successful, winning World Series races and things. So he was really talented as well. And he'd actually been my teammate in Formula Ford in JTR for a while. He was really good. But yeah, we went, and I did no testing, rocked up, and this was a grid absolutely littered with some talent from Stoffel van Dorn, and
I've got a list here. It's ridiculous.
And Pierre Gasly, I think. I mean, it was literally like everyone. I mean, what you got to remember as well at this point, though, is I'm probably, what am I now? Like 22, maybe older, getting on 23, and they're like 17, 16. So I was already too old, really, to be there. But like I say, I didn't really have any options, and didn't really know what else to be doing. So there I was, and due to very much lack of testing, not been in a car, I don't think, since the end of the year before. So didn't qualify very well, never seen the circuit. And I got collected in a high-speed accident at Turn 1. A car, I'd overtaken anyone who's seen Aragon, there's like a really tight, it's a long old straight into a hairpin. And then
it's a downhill straight, isn't it? Really far.
It's miles. It's such a long straight. And then it does a hairpin, then it comes back on itself and basically goes uphill over the start-finish line. So I'd passed 2 cars who were in their own squabble, past them into the hairpin on lap 2 or something. And then I come up the hill, and as I'm about to turn into Turn 1, I could see them in my mirror, and then suddenly they both went missing. And it's one of those awful feelings as a driver. It happens every now and again where your gut's telling you something's wrong. And the other part of you is going, it'll be all right. And by the time you've done that, it's either happened or it hasn't. So I turned in.
Not all right, or it is, yeah.
Yeah, I turned in and I got collected side on by a car that was basically flying. The car, not the car behind me, the one behind that, had hit the car in front, taken off, hit the pit wall, and then was coming along the start-finish straight on its gearbox. And just as it was about to flip over backwards, it's hit me square on in the corner, and then flipped over the top. So basically, all that energy and the weight through the gearbox just went straight through the car, split the tub in half. I mean, these are carbon chassis, split it in half. He went over the top and broke his leg from memory, or his arm. His hands device snapped. I remember that. Jeez. And I was left sat in the middle of the track in absolute agony, not knowing what I'd hurt, but knowing everything hurt. Because I remember that I whacked my knees. After that day, not that I drove single seat as much. I did another year after that, 2023. But I drove with sort of leg protection on. The basically like foam pads for your knees.
Like pads, yeah.
Because what I'd done is I'd hit my kneecaps together. Anyone who's sort of done it when you caught your kneecap when you're walking or something, you know how it feels. It's quite painful. But I'd hit them together so hard, probably about as hard as you could. The doctor said about as hard as you could, probably for you to like crack your kneecaps really. But I couldn't feel my legs. So I was sat there for minutes thinking that this is it. I'm paralysed, and it was the scariest few moments of my life.
It must be terrible.
It was absolutely terrifying. I remember sitting there in floods of tears because I just thought I can't move my legs, and the panic, and obviously it was very scary, and then I remember the moment that I could feel my legs again, and that was like an overwhelming moment as well, because that I probably cried more at that moment than I did from the pain. Anyway, the Spanish marshal comes over and he was shouting at me in Spanish. I didn't understand any of it, and I just remember saying like everything hurts. Like I can't get out because everything hurts. And after a few minutes, what felt like minutes, I had to get myself out because no one seemed to turn up to help, and I kind of crawled myself to the side of the track. And anyway, eventually, long story short, got into an ambulance and went to the hospital and found that I'd had a hairline fracture to my pelvis, and I had to lay down for a couple of months. And that was 2012 over. But there are some pictures. I'll send you them through actually in case you want to kind of show them. But I got the pictures because I was laid in hospital, and a guy said contacted me on Facebook, and he said, look, I've got these pictures, but you might not want to see them.
I think I've seen one with a car.
Yeah, there's as the car goes over, basically the rear wheel gets to like here.
Yeah.
See me put my hand up. Not sure what my hand's going to do, but the rear wheel just passes my head and goes over. And this is before the halo. I mean, it would have killed me, no doubt, if it had hit me in the head. So that was quite. I'd say as much as the injury wasn't great. I remember sitting that night in the hospital, and you just sort of. Especially when your career is almost like you're on the rocks anyway. This was a last minute deal, out of the blue. Come and do this race, and here I was laid in hospital, and you're starting to think, is this worth it?
Yeah,
that was nearly not going to be worth it.
I guess like a moment of clarity almost.
It was a big moment for me actually to sit there, and I remember having this, sort of starting to really think about whether or not I want to continue or not, and then. Out of that, I really realised I did want to continue, and even though I can't control everything, and we always try and be safer all the time in motorsport, sometimes the worst can happen, and I realised that I love it enough, and I'm not that I ever want to put my life in at risk, but I'm conscious that I do every time I get in it, and ultimately we take as safety is paramount, but. It was experiences like that I realised that I'd much rather have motorsport in my life and take the risk than not have it at all. So, that was a moment of clarity. But yeah, it wasn't 2012 will not go down as the most successful season.
No, not the best year, but maybe something in the bigger picture that, in a weird, perverse way, might even be a good thing in terms of your mindset and things. So. Just not at the time, obviously. that was 2012 written off. 2013, you got back in the car. You obviously made the decision that you wanted to carry on racing, and it was all right, wasn't it? 2013. I mean,
Yeah,
you were
it
back with
was.
JTR in Formula Ford, and anyone who would have seen the post that went out earlier, well, I mean, I'll pass it over to you. I mean, it was astonishing.
It was. It was. Yeah, having raced with JTR in 2010, I was back with them in 2013. It was the first year of slicks and wings wings for Formula Ford. It was the EcoBoost, first year of the EcoBoost era, and I was with in the MyGal with JTR, and we had a Mountune engine. Mountune obviously now power the Ford Focus, so that was my first time sort of dealing with those guys, and yeah, we were just mega really, and we had an advantage, I would say. Look, I mean, I did drive some good races, no doubt, but certainly we did have an advantage at times. I mean, I won 23 races. The problem with that is that after a certain point, it becomes just another number.
Yeah,
And
you
it
must know
started,
you're going to win almost.
yeah, and it started to turn against me because some of the races actually I won. I actually fought really hard to win. I remember one particular one at Rockingham. I think we had a bit of an issue, and I won the race by the skin of my teeth. And I drove really well to win that race. And I remember when I read the report, it was basically a bit blasé about, oh, Dan wins again. And I was just like, that's not kind of true. That was actually, I deserved a bit more credit for that one.
It's like they're just looking at the results saying, oh, he's won again.
Yeah, very
Which
much
people
so.
do tend to do, don't they? And you think
Uh,
there's a lot more behind it.
there was a lot more. And obviously, the big problem with when you dominate like that also is that people very quick to say, well, who are you racing against? And then those drivers come under a bit of fire and scrutiny. And as much as people do remember that I won 23. I didn't do the final few because it was we'll save the budget. The championship was won.
Yeah.
Um,
I've got here that you still won by 105 points, which is despite missing the last 6 races.
Yeah. Which I mean, it was a good year, but certainly I don't look back on it as being like if I don't think those races will go down as being some that I truly remember, because ultimately I was probably a bit further on in my development as well. As I say, I'd done Formula Ford a couple of years earlier. A lot of the guys I was racing were quite new. Not that I'm trying to self-diminish, but I'm just, as much as it was nice to win 23 races, I think some of the stuff I did after that is probably shows a bit more about me, really.
Yeah, absolutely. Just for the record, this is probably the good thing. It's a good stat. You won every single race that you entered that year. So
I did, yeah, I did.
That's if people don't know that, that's very cool. That doesn't come easily. Am I right in saying as a result of that, you earned a test with the Airwaves, the Motorbase team? Obviously, they were the Ford Focus. I assume you enjoyed that.
Very much so. Yeah. I got a test at the end of the year, which is kind of a little bit of a young driver thing that they do. I think they still do it. At least they did do it up until recently. I did it. I think Ash Sutton did it the year after. There's a few guys that have sort of gone through it, and usually it's a prize for winning a support category on the TOCA series. And that was my first introduction to BTCC.
Yeah.
And we tried quite hard actually for the year after, for 14, to sort of do something to try and use the Ford link. This 23 Ford, wins in the Ford. Very much had quite a lot of my career at that point in a Ford of some description, to try and get something pulled together with Ford, and went down to have a bit of a meeting with David Bartram, as it were, and it all seemed quite sensible until you come up against the inevitable of the financial side of it, and it just was a long way from where we could get to. Sure. In terms of trying to drum up sponsorship. Pretty much everything I'd done until that point was family backed, and as it is for a lot of people. But we were talking from 50 to 70, 80,000 that we would pull together, and I would have a few sponsors that we could go for 10 and 15 here. Not not 400. That's like
Yeah, you were
that's
adding
like
an extra
that's
zero.
like
Yeah,
we're not even anywhere near.
yeah,
And that was kind of and that had been a story from way back really. That's why I was always for many years kind of stuck around the same point, because the jump after the entry level, the jump after Formula Ford to F3, for example, you go from 75 grand to 750 grand. It's
yeah.
not. It's not. It becomes a telephone number very quickly. So yeah. After that, it
Wow.
was another year of what do we do now? I don't think we're going to do much. This is not looking good. When I had a phone call from Stuart Parker, who said, "I've got a guy who's doing British GT. Do you want to come?" And it was the media day. I've not even seen the car, but it was the media day on like the Wednesday, and this is like Monday. And he's like, "Do you want to come and have a go and see what it's like with him?" And I was like, "Oh, okay." So I went down, drove the car in that day, and quite quickly, I think a few of the media outlets, or whatever it might be, I say media outlets, Autosport and people, or somebody had started to tweet Cammish joins British GT with Barry Baxter in Team Parker. And I hadn't even said I was doing that at that point. It was just kind of
You just went
happened.
along.
And then it was like, oh well, I'm not doing anything else. So that sounds good. So
Wow.
I ended up sort of staying, and that's literally how that happened.
Almost like fell into it almost. I mean, there was a
Very much.
question a while back from like Dan Mayhew, evening Dan, and he said why the Porsches route over the Clio Cup route and the Genettas. I guess that was it. It was just there and it
Yeah.
happened, and that was it. I guess.
No, very much so. I wouldn't say um, the sort of tin top thing hadn't really crossed my mind as of yet. As I say, I
Right.
was I was
Are you
looking
still looking at
down.
single seats or?
I'd sort of looked down mainly more down the GT type stuff for a while.
Okay.
Um, I mean, it's a long time ago now. I'm trying to remember exactly how it happened, but you're right about the Porsche stuff. That's why that came around. So British GT that year was. I enjoyed my time with Parker. Made some good friends. Stuart to this day it has been really a big part of my career. Jules Westwood, who was the team manager, I was with him yesterday. I'm very close to Jules. These are good people that really helped me. And the British GT, basically with Barry, he's a lovely guy, but he was a little bit off the pace, bless him, in the AM class, and we never really had a chance of much success. So all I could do was try and do my bit in my category, which was the pro, obviously for GT4. I think I had a couple of poles, and I brought it in the lead or in the top two quite often before this pit stop. But really, there were no results to be had. What did happen though, and what I'd been told would happen, and kind of was the carrot, was that back then Porsche had the Carrera Cup used to have a guest car, and
Yes.
each team would get to use it a couple of rounds. And the final race was going to be Brands GP, and Parker had it. And Stuart had said to me that when he gets it, he was going to let me do it.
Right.
And this is a big, for certainly for anyone younger who might be listening, and anybody younger driver that I meet, I always say the same thing: just make sure that you always give your best, because you just never know when your day is going to be your day. Because I went to that event, put it on pole, won the first race, would have won the second race had I not pitted for wets. When I was about 5 seconds in the lead, I should never have pitted, but that's another story. But not only did I have a great day and really stamped sort of a bit of a mark on it, because not many people had come along and just done that at that level in sort of Carrera Cup. Tim Harvey was watching, who'd been sponsored previously by Nationwide vehicle repair company.
Yeah.
And they were
Like he
looking.
knows his Porsche, doesn't he?
He
Tim?
does know his post very well, and they were looking to someone to support going forward. And Tim spoke to me and said, "Look, I think I'm going to put you forward for it." And at that point, I'm 6 years in now to my racing career. Kind of heard that a couple of times, and I didn't really. I remember not getting too excited at that point, just thinking, "Okay, like let's see." And lo and behold, I think February or March, I get a phone call saying, "No, it's definitely happening, and you're going to be in Redline, which is like the team to be with, certainly one of the top ones." And basically fully sponsored, and that changed my career around in an instant.
Yeah, I mean that kind of weekend at Brands, I guess it was that.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
I think without that, if I'd have turned up and my heart wasn't in it, or I'd just had an off day, or a million and one things, I don't think I'd be sat talking to you. Put it that way.
right. Well, it was that big a moment, and well, I mean, obviously, yeah, we
I'm
can see
sure.
from what happened afterwards that it was a
I
big
mean,
moment. I mean, it was.
no, it certainly was. I mean, like I said, raising the funds has always been the hardest part of my career, and here was an opportunity to have that bit done,
Yeah.
and put me in the right place now. Um, not with a team that was a bit of an underdog, with the team that would, had been champions and could give me a car that would, well, hopefully show what I could do. And yeah, thankfully I took the opportunity with both hands.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess knowing what you'd done on that weekend at Brands, the fact that Redline were, they'd been champions and everything. I guess even though you'd only had those two races at the one round in the excuse me in the Carrera Cup car, you must have been pretty confident, because thinking, well, I did well in that car. I've now got the full backing in a good team. You must have gone into, was it 2015?
Mm, yeah,
Pretty confident.
absolutely, we did, and yeah, I think pre-season testing went very well. I immediately felt comfortable in a cup car. I think it wanted to be. I think it wanted to be driven how I wanted to drive in a way. It kind of just suited my style, maybe. I just instantly felt at home and comfortable, and some of the little things that I sort of did in my natural sort of style really helped. And we had a new engineer that year, Frank Funk from Germany, who'd come from sort of Super Cup, and he'd joined Redline, and yeah, it was just an amazing season. I think I won 11 races that year, and I never finished lower than second, I don't think, which
I
is
think that's it. Yeah, that's what I got. Yeah.
a bit mad, really, when to think, this sort of national level. Yeah, I don't think many people had done that before. So that was a hell of a season, and certainly one I'm very proud of. And yeah, people like Simon from Redline, I'm still very close to this day, having raced for him now for just four seasons for Simon over the last 7 or so. So
yeah, it's good to have those relationships as well. And obviously, I saw that you won the first two races at Brands, but you also took a second and a first at Spa. I guess was that your first time driving at Spa?
no, because I did British GT there, so I'd
The
actually
British
been to
GT, of
Spa
course.
already. Yeah, so
But to win there,
yeah, very cool.
pretty cool.
Very, it was cool, and I remember feeling quite sorry for Josh Webster. Won the first race, and he's a good friend. Josh, he's training to be a pilot now. Actually,
I saw, yeah, I've seen these flying around all over the show.
he is. So a couple of years, you might be boarding one of his flights. So fair play to him. But he'd won on the Saturday, and obviously just wasn't much of a crowd on a Saturday. And then I went on the Sunday, and it was a WEC race, and there was a huge crowd. So I remember feeling quite. I remember thinking, "Oh, sorry, mate. We got you won the wrong one." But no, it was always amazing to race at Spa is a fantastic moment. It's just an amazing place. So, but to stand on the podium there, yeah, very special.
Yeah, very, very cool. The same just for the rest of that season. Again, I've got my figures here. Is it you took 8 wins and 4 second places from the next 12 races after that? I mean, as you said, you were in the top 2, and you won the title with time to spare. Nice to win a title in well, you won the scholarship championship and Formula Fords and single seaters, and then you've done it in a tin top. So it's a nice sort of bookend to have, isn't it?
It was, yeah, no, it was, yeah, just a great season, and really enjoyed it. It was tinged with what I would say that at this point I'm 25 now. From memory, I think that's about the right age, 25, going on 26, and yeah, it was the problem with it was, at the end of every year there is a shootout to be the Porsche Junior, which is basically puts you on Porsche's junior program.
Yeah.
And pretty much everyone that's on it ends up being a Porsche factory driver. That's kind of the
So like Harry King, as an example, was.
Well, he'll be hoping to get on it. That's
Yeah.
what Harry will be trying to be next.
He's on that route, isn't he?
He's on that route, and he'll be trying to get selected. And unfortunately, due to my age, and this is where the age thing came in, and where it kind of unfortunately is a bit of a sour taste, is that I was about 6 months too old to qualify for the junior program.
Right.
So despite absolutely dominating in Carrera Cup my first season, I didn't get to go to the shootout, and never missed my chance probably to at least try and get onto the Porsche roster.
Yeah.
And and it was a shame. It was really sad. I remember speaking at Porsche about it, and they just said, "Look, there's nothing we can do. It's like you don't meet the criteria." I just thought, this is not long after. I think Nick Tandy, when he joined, was sort of mid to late 20s.
Yeah.
And he's one of the best guys Porsche had, and I thought, surely age is just a number.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, if someone is good enough, which you had clearly shown, for the sake of 6 months,
it was sad. It really was. And it kind of left a bit of a sour taste with me with Porsche for a long time. And then 2012, I came back because at the end of the day, I'd won it in 15, but at this point it was like, well, I'm well sponsored by Nationwide, and I've still got Tim Harvey in my corner. But there's not much else for me right now other than returning, because that's what they wanted to do.
Right.
So I came back in 16 and won it again. I think
I always remember you and Dino Zamparelli fighting away around Brands Hatch.
Yeah.
The commentator seemed to love saying Dino Zamparelli. It was every other word he seemed to be.
Yeah. No, we had some good races. I think I won a fair few that year, and again, just no chance of me going to the scholarship to the shootout. So, and then did it same again in 17. I think we did, but this time I managed to also raise a bit of budget to do Super Cup, which was an amazing experience. With Lechner. So I did Super Cup and had podiums in Monaco and Hungary and Barcelona. So they were real special memories.
Yeah. I mean, was there ever a route in with Lechner, or was it again down to finances? And
I was in Lechner.
Yeah, but I mean, in terms of like a longer term or
So I was meant to stay for 2018. The deal was in basically that I joined in 2017. I did a dual program, the UK and Super Cup. I had to miss 2 rounds of the UK Championship, which was a bit of a shame. But I'd done very well in the others in the UK, which was great. And then I finished 4th overall in Super Cup my first year. Did very well, and Walter, who sadly passed away, Walter Leitner, who owned the team. The plan was for me to stay. It was never a 1-year thing. It was always going to be a continuation on that. And it was that winter that I ended up speaking with Matt Neal and obviously jumping and joining the Team Dynamics. So that kind of came to an end really, kind of prematurely, because it wasn't really meant to. It was kind of I took a decision and kind of diverted away.
Made a change of route. I mean, there's a lot of BTCC fans on it. I can see from the comments we're all talking about forward focus and boost and goodness knows what. So we're going to. I mean, we've got to the BTCC. Obviously, Gordon Shedden had been with Team Dynamics, very successful. He decided to try his hand in the European series, and he sort of announced. I think he made his decision before the end of the season. Then he announced shortly after that he was off to Europe, or vice versa, something like that. Mm-hmm. Was it Matt who approached you, or did you think maybe there's a route in here? And
no, it's a strange one actually. I found out Gordon was leaving when everyone else did. I read it on Autosport, I think.
Yeah.
And at this point, I was very much meant to be turning to Lechner on the same deal that I had the year before.
Right.
And at this point, like I said, I'd already at this point, I was already thinking that maybe the GT thing wasn't going to happen. Porsche had, whether or not, whether it was my age or, they certainly had the opportunity to look at me before and never had. I was hearing all kinds of stories out of the GT scene in terms of how much money you would need to buy your way in to start with before you even, staying there is one thing, but getting in is the hard bit. I was already a gold rated driver, which was a nightmare basically.
Yeah, it's easy if you're bronze or silver, isn't it? Or you can.
Yeah, well, most sort of drivers are below a certain level are silver, and silver's kind of key because it means that you get basically you get a bit of dispensation when it comes to the pit stops and all kinds of things. And a lot of the driver lineups have to have a silver in.
Yeah.
Gold is not good because I don't think there's much difference between that and platinum, which is basically factory. So I was in this awful situation where I was already a gold, but I wasn't actually signed by anyone, which meant I didn't really have a way in. Anyway, that's all another podcast, another live story. But so yeah, I found out that Gordon was leaving, and I messaged Matt on Twitter. I still got the messages actually. I saw them a while back because I sent him a message about something else on Twitter, and it made me laugh. And I said, "Look, I've heard Gordon's going, and it'd be great to talk about it sometime." And he said, "Oh, sorry, but we've kind of filled it. Your name did actually come up on the short list, but we were told you were, signed and staying in the Porsche stuff, so we didn't take it any further." And I sort of wrote back saying, "Oh, that's a shame. I'm certainly not 100% staying with the Porsche stuff, even though at that time I kind of was. I just said it's a shame. I would have loved to talk about it. If anything changes, give me a shout." And a couple of weeks later, he messaged me back saying, "Do you want to come and talk about it?" Because things have changed, and it kind of went from there, really.
Oh, okay. I mean, I'm not going to ask who the driver was, who had filled it, because
I think it's pretty common knowledge now who it was. No longer on the touring car scene, unfortunately. But yeah, I think it all got a little bit. What's the word? I think it all got a little bit convoluted, and it didn't work. Yeah, fractured, and it didn't work out for anyone, I don't think. But it did mean there was an opportunity for me, and I kind of stepped in.
Yeah. And obviously to go into Team Dynamics, who were, they'd been champions very, very well. They were champions that year. The champions that year? I can't remember what the year before. It was a great opportunity, wasn't it?
16, wasn't it? Was their last.
16 was Gordon won it, didn't he?
Yeah.
16, because then 17 was actually. But I mean, I guess once you'd had the chat and there was the opportunity, you didn't have to think too long about it. Obviously, to go in and race alongside Matt, who, alongside Jason Plato, they're the guys who know the BTCC better than anyone.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'd already kind of made sat with, my dad and people like Tim Harvey and had a bit of a discussion about realistically what were my options. This GT sort of dream and idea. I'd won, I think at this point I'd won 30 odd Porsche races, and I'd never had a GT team call me. So that just didn't seem feasible, and I didn't have the budget of my own to go out there and try that. So and here was the touring car team, or certainly one of them at that time, who'd had Gordon for many years, backed by a manufacturer that had a contract for me, and my first professional contract. So no, it was very much a no-brainer, and certainly obviously a big decision to change tack and to look at the British Touring Car Championship, something that had been on the package for a long time. I'd been part of the support series for many years, and I'd watched touring cars a lot.
I guess you were known to teams for that reason. They'd obviously seen you flying around.
Yeah, I think a little bit, but only in passing, and they might have heard the name every now and again. But I certainly wasn't on first name terms with any of them. When I saw Matt in the paddock, I said hello, and he said hello back, but that was about it at that point.
Right.
But yeah, the opportunity came up, and we took it, and yeah, never looked back really on that one.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, I mean, just looking over, and I know the results don't tell all the stories, but the results were very solid. I mean, you took eighth on your touring car debut, which is never to be sniffed at. And then you got the first podium at Donington. Was it the fourth race? So the first,
Yeah, did I
yeah,
finish
the first
second? I
race at
think
Donington. That must have felt good.
it did. It felt very good.
It was only Josh that got ahead of you, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think I took the first. Did I take the first podium for the SK? I think I did. I can't
It would
remember.
have been the first year. Yeah, it must have. Yeah, it
Yeah,
must have been.
I think
Must
I
have
think I
been.
did.
Yeah,
I know Matt took the first win. I know that. I think I took the first podium. Um,
that
I
was
mean,
it. Was
yeah. I mean,
yeah.
it was great. I mean, what I mean, when I look back now, I mean, I sometimes do. We can talk. We'll talk about 2019 in a minute, I'm sure. But sometimes
Yeah, sorry.
there's a few missed opportunities in my career that I really kick myself about, and I try not to dwell on them too much. But
Hmm.
I actually and not a lot of people know this, and Gordon knows for sure. But a long time ago, we were quite drunk at the. Quick story: we were quite drunk at the awards ceremony, and I put a bet with Gordon that if I ever got into touring cars, I bet him that I could put it on pole in my first ever race. I don't know why I thought I could do that, but I said. But the reason I had was that for whatever reason, it's quite strange things have happened like that to me, like just weird moments. I'd be on slicks and everybody else on wets or something, and it'd rain just at the right time, and I'd do it. You know what I mean? Just like a weird coincidence.
Things would line up. Yeah.
Yeah, things would line up. And I was joking with him, and I bet him 50 quid, and he shook my hand. Anyway, I did put it on pole at Brands Hatch on my debut, and I missed the bloody red light, didn't I, at the end of the pit lane? So kick myself about that, because that would have been quite an arrival to have taken the first pole of the season in the brand new car and as a brand new first race driver.
Yeah.
But
And also
unfortunately,
taking 50 quid off a Scotsman.
and taking 50 quid off Gordon, not that he'd have remembered. I think we were both quite drunk at that point.
Yeah, you'd have probably.
But yeah, it was a great season. I think, like I said, I think I finished 10th overall. Matt finished 9th, just ahead by a few points. And the car had speed in places, and it didn't in others. Sometimes you just don't know why. It was a new car. We didn't have the setups for every track. I was certainly still learning the ropes. And thankfully, I had a great teammate in Matt Neal to do it from. He was a consummate professional, and thankfully, we really drove quite similar in how we actually wanted the car to feel. So he could do a lot of the setup, and I would just try and drive it to the best of my ability.
Yeah.
And that seemed to work quite well. Obviously, I started to sort of pick things up, and there was so much more to learn in touring car racing than I'd ever been used to. I mean, my whole career was you're given a car, that's kind of, it comes off a production line, where it's a Porsche or whatever it might be. You can change a few settings, but fundamentally the car's the car. Suddenly a touring car, we can change all kinds of stuff. It's built around you. You want to go off on a tangent and start developing the setup in a different way, you can do that. So there's so much more you can adjust, and that was quite eye-opening to me. I had to really listen and pay attention to Matt, because obviously he was 30 years under his belt. He knew exactly what he was doing. So I had the right person to learn off for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And even by the end of the year, it was very obvious how highly he thought of you. I mean, I saw some of the interviews, and he just said, "Oh, he's come in, he's done brilliantly, and he said that I remember saying that you're taking it all in your stride, which obviously falls in line with what you just said, with learning and everything, and a lot more to take on board, which is part of the reason why we love the series." But you took 2 wins in your first year, in the first season. Had you expected to be winning races in your first year in the BTCC? Because you went back to back at Brands Hatch.
I mean, yeah, as I say, I certainly, I do expect a lot of myself, and I put a lot of pressure on myself, more than anyone else does, in terms of, I don't mean other drivers do. I mean, in terms of, no one else around me puts pressure on me, if you know what I mean. The pressure comes from within. So, I did expect that, having been quite, very successful really in UK Porsches, and then in European as well, from been on the podium at Super Cup level. I knew that I was certainly good enough to take podiums and wins in the BTCC. sometimes probably just put a bit too much pressure on myself to do so. Also, been part of the team at Dynamics. Gordon's were big shoes to fill.
Yeah.
And it was easy to sort of get ahead of myself, thinking that I should be able to do things that I had probably didn't have the experience to do.
Sure. Because of the surroundings.
Yeah, there's a lot to learn, and one thing that probably I didn't realise, but I do now, is that I also had to learn the drivers I was racing with. I mean, a lot of these guys I'd never raced against because I wasn't. You mentioned before, why not Clios, etc. Well, I didn't, and because I never did those series, I'd never raced these guys.
Sure, because
I was on a tangent. I was on this route over towards the GT side, and not a lot of guys were on that same route with me.
Sure.
I think the only guy really that I'd raced before was Tom Oliphant. Everyone else was kind of new to me. So, and they didn't know me. I didn't know them.
British GT, hadn't he, with Rick Parfitt? And
yeah. So it was just a, you sort of get comfortable around them. They start to know you, and I think also, I mean, I don't think I'd be wrong in saying that maybe there was a bit of a target that year. Here was a guy with no touring car credentials whatsoever, that had gone into one of the biggest teams in the British Touring Car Championship. I think there were probably a lot of people that thought they deserved it more, and I think they did probably wanted to prove that to me every chance they got. But over time, obviously, I settled, and I think by year 2, I remember saying to people at the beginning, I felt like a bit of an imposter in a way. I was like a GT driver pretending to be a touring car driver, when actually now, I very much feel that's not the case, and obviously I fit in as much as anyone.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's an interesting point. I mean, that's never really come up. Is learning the drivers around you. I mean, that's again, people just say, "Oh, you just come in and into touring cars, and why is so and so not doing as well, and why is it's a different style of racing, different style of driver, and because people don't really think about that kind of thing." Obviously, 2019, you got the year under your belt, and so you're starting to feel like you belong a bit more, and I guess the title was clearly the aim, just like within the team. I think that year, I think BMR was struggling a bit in 2019 with the Subaru. It didn't quite work. It was basically you and those chaps over at BMW, the kind of the guys to to beat. And it seemed like a fairly slow start, just a couple of sort of top 10 finishes in the first half dozen rounds. But then the second half of the season, things just seemed to click a bit for you. I mean, was that something with the car, or with you and the car, or because you just seem to be super consistent, just banging in podiums and goodness knows what?
Yeah, no, we had I think 2 years in a row we had a really poor start. I think it was we used to get to Brands for the first round, and the weather was just all over the shop. And I think and it's one of those where you put slicks on, then it rains on lap 1, and it's all just like a bit of a gamble. And the 2 years on the trot, we'd kind of got completely the wrong way, both me and Matt. So I think round 1 was almost a write-off. Can't remember round 2, to be honest, but that might have just been my own doing. But certainly, I think the car was a lot better. We'd sussed out some of the weaker points that we had. I was a more complete driver, and like you said, from once we sort of hit a stride, we really did hit a stride. I think I had 14 podiums that year. Basically winning every 2 races I was on the podium. So we were hella consistent. And you're right, it was the BMWs that was the year they came with the new 3 Series, and they dominated the first half of the season.
Yeah,
absolutely dominated. But people talk about now what they're seeing now in the championship. I was Tom Ingram. Even though they were winning, I was always on the podium with them. So, and basically, when they made a slipped up, I took advantage. And that year, like you said, Ash wasn't quite there in the Subaru. They were, won the year before, and I don't think they were down to win it again that year. I think Tom Ingram maybe had a brand new car in the Toyota that year.
Yeah, the Corolla. Yeah,
that was new. So that was kind of hit and miss in terms of whether it was good or not, just like we'd been the year before. So I was at this perfect point where I'm in a developed car that's ready to go, and the BMW is super fast. So it was kind of us really. And yeah, a great season. that came up just short.
Yeah, I mean, that was the thing. I mean, that was the consistency thing. You were just there all the time, banging in the points, almost doing what Colin has made a career out of,
Yeah,
just
absolutely. Yeah,
bagging those points, which is obviously key with Birmingham. Oh, Birmingham, with BMW being up the road. I did see a comment. We're going to get to that bit of the season in just a second. Unfortunately, I don't hold it for too long. I had a comment earlier from where were we? A lady called Nikki Jin. Hello, Nikki. And she just said, which leads on to where we are now. She says, "Can I just say, Brands GP 2019 Race 1 was one of the best wet weather drives I've ever seen across any formula. Absolutely phenomenal."
oh, thank
That
you.
absolutely. I mean, I was lucky enough. Actually, it was about a fortnight before I started this page. Was like Rory Butcher's team and Sam Tordos' team. They invited us, some fans, along to, do a bit of hospitality, things like that. And I had a bird's eye view of it, and it was absolutely unreal. I mean, obviously, you were in the middle of a title fight. Qualifying hadn't quite gone your way.
No, it had gone pretty badly, actually. I think I was 12th or 11th.
You would, yeah. Outside the top 10. And I just remember that pass you did on Rory around the outside of Paddock Hill Bend. I actually watched it yesterday just to refresh, and it just made me smile. It's a proper bit of racing. I remember the commentary when I got back, and they said Dan Cammish is finding grip where there isn't any. You must have loved that. That move.
I did. It was an amazing day, that was. I mean, obviously it's remembered. I remember it for the wrong reasons, but I do also. Aside from that, it was a really good day. Me and Matt on the podium, 1-2. Me on slicks, him on wets. That was an unusual. That we didn't have that written when we started the day. I was a little bit down. Obviously, I was kind of in the title, but also realistically knew that it was going to be tough, especially after qualifying.
Sure.
And then suddenly after race 1, here I am right in the middle of it, actually. But yeah, it was a great race, and that was, I think it was the second race that year I won on slicks in the rain. I don't know if it was 2020 that I did it again at Thruxton. I can't remember which year it was, but yeah, I do like being on slicks in the wet. It's always a challenge, and yeah, it just I think a couple more corners I wouldn't have won. I think Matt would have passed me obviously initially, and then
because he came through the second, didn't he? It was a 1-2.
Yeah, and there was a train of cars coming behind him who'd pitted, so the flag came just in time. But yeah, it was a great opening encounter, that one.
Yeah, I mean, just quickly, I mean, I always wonder what's going through drivers' minds what was going through your mind when you were going around the outside of Rory? Because we
please don't hit me. I think
almost everyone was saying he's not, is he? No, he's not. He is. He's not going to do. He's done it. He's done it. It was that everyone was doing that. It was fantastic. I mean,
yeah, I
guess you're thinking self-preservation.
No, I think I had a bit of. I think I managed to keep a bit more tyre heat than Rory at that point. And so I could feel where the grip was, and I'd been catching him obviously, so I knew how I was doing that. And when he sort of slightly covered the inside, I knew that I was going where I was going. And I think from memory, if you watch, I think he just about skims the rear bumper as I sort of go, as I get the grip and go through.
Yeah,
so
like that.
I was quite lucky to survive that one. But yeah, and then obviously we went on to win. But I love moments like that, and I think all the drivers do. It's them kind of conditions, and it's them moments that we all do it for. It's that moment when you have your moment and you're the best on the day, and you put it all out there, and no one can quite equal it. That's the adrenaline, and that's the buzz that keeps bringing us back to it.
Absolutely fantastic. Quick one, obviously. Okay, so now game on, race 2. I've got to ask this. I asked this to Matt in 2020, and he sort of said with a half smile, racing incident. When Colin got turned around, obviously had you got ahead? I can't remember. No, you were behind.
Yes,
I can't remember who was.
No, I was.
You'd got ahead, and then Colin. Then
I was still in the lead. It was. I'd got off the line, okay, I think, and then but Colin had come from did he come from like 6th to 2nd or something? You know,
He shot through, yeah.
yeah, you know, the rear-wheel drives always start well.
Yeah.
You know, that's kind of been slowed up a little bit more recently, but even now, I think that they're still very good at starts, and that's, you know, that's just the balance of the formula. But he jumped through from like 6th to 2nd, and I mean, depends what kind of fan you are. I'm quite impartial because I don't really care. I didn't win. People said, "Oh, you know, you'd planned that," and it's like, yeah, we really planned for Colin to go from 6th on the grid to
Yeah.
2nd.
Yeah. Everyone knew he was going to do that.
It was like, absolutely not. You know, we had no idea. As far as I'm concerned, I think Colin leaves the door open a little bit, and
He's certainly not on the
as a
normal line. Yeah.
as a good teammate would, and I think anyone would do the same. Matt went for a move that was definitely on, and why wouldn't he? And why shouldn't he? We'd certainly do it for our teammates, and I think any other driver on the grid would do it for theirs. So the contact comes actually, I think, because Colin kind of realizes and tries to turn back across the front, and obviously the pendulum effect kind of takes him round.
Yeah.
There'll be fans of Colin that don't agree, but I'll you know, I still kind of, but you know, end of the day, he won the championship, so no hard feelings as far as I'm concerned. But it was it was certainly 50-50, and I think some of the, you know, I remember, you know, Matt getting a lot of stick for it that I thought was just not really deserved, because
he did.
It certainly wasn't malicious. It was just end of the day, it's the British Championship is on the line, and you make a split decision and you go for a gap that you think was there, and as far as I'm concerned, I think it was there.
Yeah. I mean, just from speaking to people at that time, it was 50-50. Some people were saying, "Oh, well, you know, Colin's turned across," and half of them were saying, "Well, Matt's done him." So it depends on which side you look at it.
Of course, it does, absolutely.
I do remember Matt. He put a tweet out, I think, that evening saying, "Oh, congratulations, Colin! But if you see a Honda in your rearview mirror, I promise it won't be me," or something like that.
Yeah.
Something like that. We've got to come to race 3. I don't want to talk about it too long, because we saw how it affected you afterwards. You took yourself off social media and just to get a bit of space. It's the only time that I've heard an audible gasp around a circuit over the engine noise because of the situation and everything. I mean, we all saw what happened. Colin was coming through and Andy Jordan was there, and you're in the position to win the championship. And I mean, did you know? I mean, there was a comment here. John Chambers, you say that I was there when with the glowing, we could see the glowing front brakes and things like that. Were you aware of any issue with the brakes or anything like that?
Yeah, I was aware I was in trouble from quite early on, probably like lap 3 or 4, I would say. So, you know, I'm no stranger to glowing brakes. At that time of the season, obviously the brakes do get very hot and the light is dimming, so they do look to glow more.
Sure.
But they also should cool once they get in clear air and in a straight line. And mine just weren't. Obviously, I didn't know this at the time, but I remember that basically I couldn't bring the pedal was getting longer and longer, and I couldn't recover it. No matter how hard I tried, no matter how little I tried to use the brake, or how much clean air I tried to get, or how slow I tried to actually drive, the pedal would go long and stay long. You'll see a lot of the time, Fulton Park's a good example. Quite often you'll see cars with the brake lights will flash in a straight line as they pump the pedal up, because we suffer quite badly from brake fade.
Just to get a bit of pressure in it.
Yeah, so the pedal initially will be quite a bit spongy, so a quick dab, and then as you press it again, it's solid. And even doing that, I could not bring the brake back. It was just sponge all the way to the floor. Wow. And I remember saying over the radio, like, I am in trouble here. Like, I can't recover this. What do I do? And the problem was, obviously, they were scrambling on the pit wall. It was a bit quiet from their end, because what can they do? Colin is like a man possessed, and he's coming through like an absolute storming rate. So I had to keep going at some speed. I couldn't drop far enough back because I would have.
Because he was going to bag the points, yeah.
So it was like, you know, I remember trying my best just to keep the thing going, and obviously it didn't. It just eventually I hit the brake in sort of pressed the brake into Hawthorns, and it just went all the way to the floor, to the bulkhead, and I didn't stop
Really?
at all. So it was out. But ultimately, the sad thing is, and I think what hurts more is that I don't really have an answer for that. If I had there's no closure there because I never really found out what the problem was.
If there was a reason or something that
I was just told it was a failure, but that was the only race I retired that season.
Yeah.
I think it might have been one of the few races I was outside the points. So to have got that far and to get within a lap of winning was, that was hard. That is still hard now. I think.
Yeah.
I think even people have asked me before, and I think it's. I bet it's every couple of weeks that I have a bit of a moment and think about it, because not many people come within a lap of winning a British title of this level and have it taken away from them through no fault of their own, and then not ever really know why either. That's it's quite tough. So but it just wasn't meant to be, and it don't take away from what was a great season.
No, definitely not.
But I put up a fight in a good car against a car that was slightly better in the BM. I didn't really win much. They won a lot. I just had to I needed every point, whereas they didn't, and that was the difference.
Yeah, sure.
That one retirement cost me, whereas they'd had quite a few retirements.
They could.
It's a little bit like what you're seeing with Ash now. The championship's quite close, but Ash keeps retiring. If he did,
he's had two races.
So it just happened to be the last race of the season. And the truth is, it's so hard to win this championship. You not only do you need a fast car and a great team and all the other bits that make up a competitive season, but you need the stars to align as well.
Yeah.
You need a load of luck. It's one of the hardest championships out there to win. I really believe that. And there's guys that have been in it a long time that have only won it a couple of times. I mean, Jason did it for 30 years and won it twice.
Yeah,
it's really difficult. So when you see guys like Ash and Colin, don't underestimate how hard it is to do it. Not just once, but to repeat. To repeat it is an incredible feat.
That's the tough bit. Yeah, I mean, just one last thing on that. I mean, we saw you took yourself away for a while, which is completely understandable. What I remember is on the radio, you were remarkably calm and composed. And I'm guessing inside you weren't, but outwardly you just said, "Look, something's broken. Not sure what it is."
I don't think I've ever suffered from shock before, but I think that was.
It was just happened almost.
100%. That was shock, and I didn't react. I remember not really having. I don't think it really sunk in what had just happened.
Sure.
And
sure.
I remember it. Not to bring the tone down, but we stayed overnight in Brands Hatch in the hotel. We all went out for a bit of a team dinner, and obviously told some positive, nice stories about the year. And my girlfriend at the time, now my wife, Libby, who works for Formula E, she was on a flight the next day. And I remember she left, giving her a kiss and saying goodbye at the hotel, and she was sad to be going. And I shut the door and just burst out crying. Because it just finally hit me when I was on my own, just what had kind of come and gone, and my whole career building up to that moment. And the thing is, like I said, I talking about it too much, but that moment was taken from me. That end moment, you see Colin still in the car celebrating. Everyone's in this, the elation, the effort, and this is a full. Not only is it a full-time job for a lot of people that work so hard, it's a culmination of my whole career. I didn't get that moment. I missed, and that was quite hard at the time. I remember thinking about that a lot. Not just for me, but for my family. For my dad, for the team, for everyone. So, a big shame. But what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. And from not having an outburst and not letting my myself down, I guess, on the day, I think I got quite a few new fans. People really kind of. I think a lot of people really felt for me that it didn't go my way, and obviously I came back the next year, determined to put it behind me, and I won the opening race of the season. So
Which I remember everyone being absolutely delighted for you to win that first race, just to almost start a new chapter.
Yeah, it was a bit like you got the problem is when something like that happens, especially when it's the last race of the year, you've got a long time to sit and think about it.
Yeah,
We all go through tough moments, but they do say the best, it's best to get back on the horse.
Yeah.
And the problem is when the horse doesn't bolt again for 6 months, you've got a long time.
Hibernation doesn't help, does it?
Yeah, you've got a long time to sit and wait. So no, it was nice to get off to a great start in 2020, and we had a great season.
Yeah.
Ultimately, another year where I think I could have been champion, but for a few gremlins. I think we were so fast that year. Brands GP, I think I'd won the first one, and then I had power steering failure in the second, and then even though I was in a podium position, and then in race 3 I got to 6th, and the engine expired. And if you just had take them points, that'd be enough to make me champion. So
and that comes back to the luck and things aligning, doesn't it?
Everyone's got a story in touring cars. It's because we all have moments in the season where, if only, that they were mine. That those points cost me a chance of being closer. But then you speak to Colin or Tom or Ash or whoever it might be, and they'll point to places where they could have scored more. You've really, touring cars is won on your bad days. You've got to score even when it's all going wrong around you. You've got to bring home points no matter where, because this championship's can be decided by a couple at the end of the day.
That's a great line. Decide on your bad days. Make your bad days as good as they can be. It was a super condensed season for reasons that we all know with COVID. It must have been draining for you guys and for the crew and everything, because it wasn't quite a full season, but it was sort of what 6th, 7th of a season or something, wasn't it? In about 4 months. I mean, it was just amazing.
It was very condensed, very actually, hard work for the guys, like you said. It didn't feel the same. I think it really highlighted as well one of the main, the main draws of the BTCC is the crowd and the fans. Without them, it just didn't feel quite the same. The good days didn't have quite the same ring to them without the roar of the crowd, and it was a season, and also in a way, very sad that it was Matt's final season, because he deserved, for someone who'd been so successful and a big part of the championship, he deserved a better send off than that last year with no one there to see it. So I always thought that was a shame.
Yeah, definitely. I think we'd have all liked to see Matt have one more year if it was possible, just to say thank you, really, because he's done so much for it. And but I mean, obviously, 2021 Honda withdrew the factory backing, which I guess didn't help your situation. It must have been tough not being, not having a full seat, not having a seat for the year.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I won't go into too much detail, but it was, we unfortunately lost Steve Neal recently. I went to the funeral just last week.
Yes, and one of our thoughts are with the whole Neal family, of course.
Yeah, it was sad to be out with the team, because I really felt at home there, and this is a team that had really brought me on and really invested in me. I was very close to the championship on a couple of occasions, and I thought I'd be there for the foreseeable future, and then it all kind of just wasn't very quickly. I think it was quite late on as well. I didn't find out until March, really, that my seat was kind of vulnerable. I knew we were sort of losing Honda. I'd known for a long time. I knew that Dan Rowbottom was going to be my teammate. And then it all kind of...
He actually told me late in 2020, before everyone else knew. I had to keep it very quiet.
Yeah. It all got, unfortunately, just financially, I think, just too difficult to keep me. And I totally understand that. And obviously, Gordon had been part of the team in the past. I think he had a little bit of sponsorship money coming through some of the connections he has, and I didn't, ultimately, and the team needed to utilize that. So unfortunately, I was out, and which was quite tough to take, especially in March when
Well,
I think there was no touring car seat left. And I spoke to a few different people, and I'm sure that I probably could have got on the grid elsewhere had I found out earlier, but it just wasn't to be. So I quickly rang around, and Simon at Redline had rang me anyway, and I'd explained that I think I might be in trouble. This is before I officially knew I was out. And he said, well, if you are, will you come back and race with me in Carrera Cup?
Okay.
And I said, well, yeah, of course I will. You know, that'd be a great opportunity to come back and do that. And then, yeah, so I did. But I've seen from your notes what you're going to ask me next, so I'll tell you. So obviously then Creasy ended up out with BTC, didn't he, at the last minute?
Yeah, very last minute, yeah.
And I was thinking, I will definitely do that. Like, I will have a go at if I get asked to do Thruxton, I'll do it, because it's a Honda at Thruxton. It's the first race of the season.
Yeah.
Everyone's as rusty as I am in terms of the racing, and if you want to drive a Honda anywhere, it's at Thruxton.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, and I'd said this to my dad and that. I said, you know, if I do get a call, I'll do it. And then a few days later, I did get a call from Steve Dugman saying, would you be interested? And I said, absolutely, I would. Sign me up. I've got a point to prove, and did it. And qualifying didn't go quite to plan. I'd not driven a car in months, you know, not since I stepped out of it in Brands Hatch. So it was a bit of a baptism as a fire. But you know, we finished I think 5th and 2nd on the podium behind Josh. The team over the moon. You know, to have 2 cars on the podium in the second race, and that was great. And Steve asked me to stay with the team for the year, the last minute, and said, you know, do you want to, will you come on and be part of the team? And I ummed and ahed for a while, and I went back to Simon at Redline and said, look, this has come up. What do you think? And but the thing was that I'd already kind of committed to Simon at Redline. I'd made a decision that I was going back, and even though we'd been really successful at Thruxton, that was I didn't know what the car was going to be like everywhere else. Obviously, Josh Cook's very much the kind of the focal point of that team at that time.
Yeah.
I'm kind of walking in fresh. It was kind of like, don't I? Do I roll the dice and go back to Porsches and see what comes in 7 or 8 months' time? It was a big decision, that one. I spoke to loads of people, wrote down pros and cons for each, and went back and put my neck on the line, racing, you know, the likes of Harry King, and you know, had a really successful year, but very high pressure year, to win a 3rd championship, which was great, but also, you know, in hindsight, was exactly the right thing to do, because you know, come November, you know, that's when Pete Osborne called me about the motor-based opportunity and the new sponsor that was Napa, and here was an opportunity that I got to take. And you know, sometimes things happen for a reason, don't they?
Yeah, absolutely. Things just sort of pan out in a way that works out. Very quick question on the Porsches. I mean, firstly, the Duckham's car looked awesome. Everyone loves the Duckham's livery. Because I'm old, I remember the Van Diemen from Formula 4, the Duckham's one. Awesome. Very quickly, Mark O'Neill, what was it like racing against Harry King as he won the championship the year before? And I've spoken to Harry, and I don't think I still don't think he realizes how good he is. But I mean, he is on it, isn't he, Harry? When he goes, he's very, very good.
He is very good. No, he's super talented. And I remember when I, you know, made the decision to go back, you know, knowing that I was gonna, he'd won before, like I used to in the past. You know, he was dominant.
Yeah.
And it was quite. The opening sort of encounters were quite interesting, because the, you know, Porsche, you know, GB, I think this was quite good for them in terms of the publicity for it. You know, you had like past champion against new champion, and there was quite a
They
lot.
basically build it as you against Harry, wasn't it? It was
Yeah,
how
it was
they were
very,
all
very
on.
much so. That's how it felt. I think for him and me actually, and obviously with Lorcan, who's super talented and very fast as well, kind of thrown in for good measure. But certainly me against Harry, and God, I think he came out swinging, bless him. As did I, and I think we fell out at the first race. And we get on now. You know, I'm actually quite a big fan. Believe it or not, I think he's really talented, and he's going to go a long way in motorsport.
Definitely.
I'd sort of come back, and he'd had it all his own way the year before, and I kind of tried to put a stop to that, and managed to just about to do so. Maybe a bit of experience told in the end. I picked up points, something that touring cars has certainly taught me how to do.
Yes.
And even though maybe weren't quite as quick as I once was in the Porsche for one reason or another, I was quick enough to on my day still win, and certainly pick up lots of podiums. And when I say that, I actually had the most fastest laps of the season, so I'm talking rubbish. But I managed to win, and I don't think a lot of people would have given me a prayer at the start of the season going up against Harry, especially when they saw. You know, I think a lot of people became Porsche fans having watched the way he would come through the grid.
It was the race at Knock Hill the year before that everyone took notice of, wasn't it?
He made things happen that I didn't really think were possible.
Yeah.
And I say, still till now, I don't think I've ever seen anyone who can drive as quick off road as they can on road. I mean, he can literally be on the grass and find grip. But the one person that I tell you who he reminds me of is Ash. Ash can do that. Ash can find grip where you just don't think there is it, and he can do things at times. He has a way of finding the limit and then coming back from it.
Yeah,
that's a skill in itself. So no, it was a great season, and probably my best title for Porsche. Even though the first two were fantastic, that one was so hard fought. You know, I used to come home and bear in mind. Mentally as well, had gone from being a factory touring car driver in the big show back to the supports. My world had ended. Going up against this young kid who was determined to show me up, basically. You know, that mentally I had to try and deal with that and not let my head drop. And I used to come home sometimes knackered, just mentally trying to deal with that. And because I didn't want to lose my, the sort of mantle I had of basically been, the top Porsche driver for the last few years. I wanted to retain that. And I really put a lot of pressure on myself to do that. And frankly, I just about managed it. So I don't think I'll be trying to go back anytime soon.
No, we've done that.
Done that now, yeah.
No, but obviously, then at the end of the season, you said you had the call from Pete Osborne, who'd obviously brought into Motorbase, and you had like Napa coming on board. I remember putting a thing out saying that people don't realise what a big deal this is. Napa are huge. They're in NASCAR, they're in IndyCar, they've been in supercars, and fantastic backers to have. But then you've switched to a new car, the Ford Focus, come almost like full circle back to Ford again.
Yeah.
Alongside Ash, I mean, it must have been properly exciting.
It was. I mean, I sat with Pete, and it was. He'd said. So at the time, obviously, I still had the Duckham sponsorship after Formula after the last year of Porsches. And I had my own group of sponsors that were around me, and it became very clear that I couldn't really take them to Motorbase with Napa coming on board. And originally I'd said, look, that's kind of, unfortunately, that's as far as we go, because if I can't bring my sponsors, then unfortunately I won't be able to do it. And that was, I can't remember when that was, not long after the end of the season. Anyway, a week or so later, I'm driving up north, and Pete rings me and says, look, we've thought about it, and we know that you can't bring anybody with you, but we want you to come anyway. And we're prepared to stand behind that and offer you a very good contract to do so. And it was like, that's huge. I can't possibly turn that down. That has to happen. And I'm very glad I did. I really believed in Pete Osborne. He's a really great guy. Got much closer to him and his family over the last few years. Motorbase is very much like one big family. We've got a great group of people there. And with Napa on board, it's been it's been really special these last sort of 18 months. And you know, I was the first guy really that joined when Napa joined. So I was there from the start of that and saw them kind of come in and everything that happened. And then Ash, not long after me, was announced. And yeah, it's just been a really cool journey. I mean, I won't lie, I was a bit surprised when I found out Ash was joining.
I think a lot of people were, because obviously he nailed it, hadn't he, with Laser and the Infinity and
absolutely. And you know, he needs no introduction, does he? Really? I mean, he's a star, and yeah, like Peter said, I think we might have a chance of getting Ash in as well. And I was like, that's great. But that means I'm going to go up against Ash.
yeah.
So in back of my mind, I was thinking, oh, great, I've got to go up against the actual, you know, one of the guy who's considered probably the best of this time. So, but we get on really well. We have a really good working relationship, and we have a lot of fun together. And he's super talented. And he came with Tony Carrozza, who's also a super talented engineer. Tom, who's on the data side, also very, very clever. And as a team around Ash, they're amazing. But what that's done to Motorbase as a whole in terms of the development of the car and the processes and what we now have, it's just changed everything. And you know, it's their influence really you're seeing that now in this year's car, because last year when they joined, it was kind of too late to do a lot of the changes that Tony had in mind. This year, though, the car's been totally reworked. It is not the same Ford Focus as it was last year. It's the best a Ford Focus can be in my eyes, and obviously we're seeing the results of that. So, but no, it's you know, the Napa involvement's fantastic. They're a really good bunch, very enthusiastic. They come to every race in the masses. They're fully invested, and you can see that in what they're doing. You know, I think they've really elevated touring cars this last couple of years in terms of the promotion and, you know, the amount of social stuff we do now. Trying to give people, you know, hopefully a bit of content and stuff they can enjoy both on and off the track.
Yeah, no, well, it's just been mentioned from like Diffan Evans. He said, "Oh, you know, how much fun is it to do the Napa challenges? They look fun. How many takes do you have to take?"
Well, now we have Dan Rowbottom. It's lots more.
300% increase.
Yeah, it's good fun. I mean, we laugh and joke from the moment we start to the moment we stop. And don't get me wrong, we're you know, very professional at what we do, and when the serious stuff comes, we obviously take it very seriously. But you've got to enjoy the people you spend the time with and work with, and yeah, we have a lot of fun, and we seem to spend more time on camera now than we do driving. But that's become part of the job, and you know, the camera guys I think are sick of us. You know, last year, the guys we work with quite closely, we see them every weekend, and they were quite positive and sprightly and everything. And now when they come to see us, Alex, who kind of heads it up, just looks defeated when he looks at me, and I'm like, I can tell that he's just we've worn him down now, because he just knows that he's coming over, and it's going to be like 20 takes later to get one small bit of content. So we have a lot of fun.
Yeah, good stuff. Got a Kevin Whitewood in from British Touring Car Chat. He says, yes, it's good to see behind the scenes. Absolutely. That's the part of things that we like. Just a couple of things I want to touch on. It didn't quite start as you planned at Napa with the fire at Donington. That looked terrifying. I don't think I've ever seen anyone exit a car horizontally almost. It was, and I'm not surprised.
No, do
you know what happened?
Yeah, it was the high pressure fuel rail split. So on the onboard, anyone who saw it, you can see it kind of sprays onto the screen, and you see it mist up just sort of on the passenger side, and then suddenly it's in flames. And when I was moving at speed, obviously the flames had kind of been fanned, and I wasn't in much of a rush at that point. And I remember thinking, right, where am I going to stop? There's a marshal. I'll aim for the marshal. But then as I came to a stop and it got some air to it, it just went up like a rocket, and the windscreen was head to toe in flame. I couldn't see out, and then it punched the smoke through the bulkhead. And it all got very real very quickly. And I jumped out the door, but it's a while ago now, but it was a really windy day at Donington. And as I opened the door and stepped up to put my head out, the wind caught it and blew the flame at my face. So I slipped and fell over and made it look very more dramatic than it had, much more dramatic than it needed. And obviously I scrambled around and ran off and got a fire extinguisher. But then because it was under such high pressure and the hole's tiny, it was just spraying out for a long time. So the flame wouldn't go out basically.
Wow.
Did quite a lot of damage. Certainly. I wouldn't say there was any like lasting damage because it was a fuel fire. It was kind of burning on the top of a lot of the components, but there was still a hell of a lot of work to do. And it's times like that, when you're quite new to the team, and you really see what a team's made of in those situations. It's great when everything's going swimmingly, but when things go wrong, that's when you see what a team's really got. And everyone pulled together and got me back out the next day, and yeah, that was an interesting debut really for me as a Napa driver. And it was the one race that Napa didn't go to. The main guys at Napa didn't go to that one, and they're on the phone going, "What's happened?" Because we're all over the news and not in a good way. But as they found, no press is bad press, and Napa were kind of talk of the day for all the wrong reasons, but still people were talking about Napa.
Yeah.
And yeah, that was it. And then you skip forward 12 months, and I win both races at Donington. So
yeah, which was,
honestly, you just things turn around very quickly.
yeah, much happier memories of Donington with that win there. Got Thomas Parker. He said that he was one of the marshals there that weekend. So we've got to give a big thumbs up to Thomas and all of his mates,
Absolutely,
all the marshals, because they are they're the behind the teams and the drivers. They are the reason we can go racing. So huge thumbs up to you guys. And Mark O'Neill says the team did great to turn the car around to get it back out there that day.
They definitely did. They worked till the early hours of the morning, I think, and everyone pulled together. There were people coming up from the workshop. Within half an hour of it, the flame's been out. There were people already jumping in vans and things and bringing parts. So, everyone pulled together, as I say, and got the car back out. And I think we scored points in race 3. So, there you go. That's when the team, it really is a team sport. And the best part, the bit I love most about it really is the team aspect. You look back at Croft at the weekend, the pole position that I took. The nice thing about that was because I didn't do the last 5 minutes, it meant I got to get out of the car and actually celebrate in the moment, when the bit that usually the driver doesn't get to see, when all the teams celebrate, and you see how much it means to these guys that put all the hard work in. I'm the bit I get to sit in the car and do the celebrations, but the bit behind the scenes is, lots of hard work and not so glamorous. And those guys deserve all the credit. So don't know. It's nice to be involved in that part.
Yeah, absolutely. Seen a comment from like Jade Walton. She said that she was there that weekend and she saw all of the car parts outside your garage. It was amazing how Napa got it back out, which obviously reinforces what you've just said. And Mark Horner said Donington 23 was a great weekend. As soon as the rain came down, I knew Dan Cammish was going to win it. So you go, glowing endorsement for your wet skills again, just like 2019. I'm just keeping an eye on the time. We've been over 2 hours, which is incredible. Just want to touch on something, but obviously we've seen this season. It's all going very well for Napa. One thing I want to talk about, and I only remembered right at the last minute before we started, the Catesby Tunnel test. That looks absolutely brilliant fun. Thumping a touring car through there.
It was.
Is it as good as it looked?
It was cool. We got. We planned to go there to do a bit of sort of straight line, sort of aero type testing, like ramp down tests. So basically, you'd sort of accelerate up to a given speed, and then we could change certain aspects of the car, and I'd depress the clutch and basically roll to see how that would affect the rolling resistance in terms of what we changed on the car and things like that. So there's certain things you can do. It was good fun. You are driving down a long tunnel. I can't remember the exact figures now, but I think it's a couple of miles underground, and it's perfectly straight and it's perfectly flat. But it does have like a dome to the roof, so it does have that sort of effect that you're driving into like a wedge.
Yeah, it's like the Italian job.
Yeah, and it was damp in places on the way down because it's obviously underground.
Right.
It's an old railway tunnel. I'm on slicks as well, so once you get up to speed of 100 odd miles an hour, 120, I think we were doing something like that. It feels very quick when you're in a tunnel. It's only 2 lanes wide, and you're on slicks, and it's damp, and there's not a lot of. And you're in Ash's car that's going for the title that year. we did one particular test, and I think I got up to a certain speed. I just said no. I can't do that one. It's too. That one's a bit too dangerous.
Yeah. Veto.
Yeah.
No, fair enough. Just a little roundup just on this season. I mean, I've said it before. The car, whether it's yours or Ash's or Sam's. Sam, underrated, doesn't get mentioned enough. He stepped up brilliantly this year. Dan's car, they all look so well set up. I mean, just how good is it to drive? I mean, there was one recently where you said where the car was on rails.
Yeah, no, it's been great. I mean, the car's fundamentally been changed a lot since last season. I think our understanding of it has changed. My engineer James and Tony Carrozza, Ash's engineer, have really. There's no stone left unturned in many ways. I don't think it's a secret that we looked to change cars at the end of last year.
Yeah,
and it didn't happen. And the investment that we had to go to a new car, we just put into the existing Focus. I think a lot of people felt the Focus just wasn't the right car to do the job. And I think we've proven actually that with the right investment and the right people, the NGTC platform means that a car can be turned into a winner. Ash has obviously got a handle on it, probably better than anyone, him and Tony. We had a very strong weekend at Croft. I won't say we've been as strong in the dry and at other places as Ash has. We've been particularly strong in the wet. I won 2 races at the start of the year and then had the pole at Brands in the wet. So I'm a bit hit and miss. I feel like we spent a lot of time at the tyre test working on the dry weather performance, certainly in qualifying. That seems to have, in the short term at least, we know putting it on pole last week. I hope we found a bit of a cure, and Knockhill will be a bit more of a test of that. But there's no doubt the car is a different weapon to what it was last year. But it's not a coincidence, as I say. It's good people with a healthy sort of budget, single-minded in their approach to performance, and with a group of drivers who work as a team. And as you say, I think Sam, who like I say doesn't get enough credit, but he's learning. He's open to learn. He studies. He wants to understand, and we do our best to help him where we can. So it's, like I said again, it's not a coincidence that you're seeing Sam have an upturn in form, because he's putting the effort in. And there's no substitute for that at the end of the day. We were testing in March and in the cold weather when no one else was really around yet, and so it's not a coincidence we're having the results we are.
Yeah, absolutely. These results don't just happen. And I'm saying Sam is my unsung hero of the year so far. Just very quickly, I saw a comment earlier on. I forget who it was. My apologies. There was a comment about fans moaning about the Fords are too fast. They got to turn the boost down and all this nonsense. I don't get on board with that. I'm sure you don't either. And if someone's spent hours developing a winning car, why should someone just say no, can't have that and turn it down? It doesn't work. Don't punish people for winning.
No, I think you're very right. I mean, don't get me wrong. If I was sat in one of the other cars, I might think differently, and I have been.
Yes,
I have been in other cars and thought differently. But the truth is, I don't think it's as one-sided as it might look.
Well, you just got to look at where Tom Ingram is.
Well, you've got to look at where Tom Ingram is.
He's right behind Ash.
Jake Hill won 2 at Alton, and but for the red flag was probably about to qualify, if not on pole, probably on the front row alongside me for race 1, and that would have been a different race 1 had he gone off of. He probably would have beat me to turn 1.
Yeah,
and then it's not a 1-2-3. So we're talking about fine margins here, and yes, we did look to have had a great day, and we did. And don't get me wrong, we're not taking that for granted. We know those days are rare. But this is far from over. Ingram's 6 points behind. Jake and Colin are right there. We're going to some tracks that suit them. And again, I'll put emphasis on the fact that we are a team. There's not many teams out there that can say that they have certainly 3 drivers, excluding Sam for a moment, who race for Napa. We are single-minded in that approach. so therefore we can help each other and want to help each other. I don't think there's many teams that have that kind of attitude, and I understand why, but it does give us a bit of an advantage at times. So I think it's closer than what it looks. Ashley's doing a fantastic job, but there's times when not all of us have been. I was sort of fifth and sixth at Ulton. Dan was behind. We look very much a match. Ashes looks fantastic at times, but again, it could all change very quickly. I think the championship right now is very close, and I don't think it needs touching at the moment.
Agreed.
Because at any moment it could swing the other way. Race 3 at Croft. Yes, we'd won the first couple of races, but there was no stopping Colin in race 3. He was gone.
Yeah.
And that I don't think any of us would have had an answer for that. So, maybe sometimes I just wonder if, things change. We've got these 3 different compounds. We've got hybrid. We've got circuits that are never quite the same twice. Did some people just struggle a bit more than we did that day? Maybe we weren't actually. Yes, we were great, but is it that we were great, or were they just struggling a bit more than we were? So we looked great, if you know what I mean. I don't know, because the lap times were actually slower at Croft this year than last year. So, there's a lot that goes into it, but there's no doubt. I can see from the fans' point of view that why they might think that, and I do think as well. With the hybrid, the rules will continue to be changed as we go forward, because it doesn't have the effect yet that the weight did. The weight used to have an effect immediately, and then the car would deteriorate over time. Right now, obviously, the car is the same from start to finish. You just lose a little bit of go. So the car doesn't become a handful over the course of the race like it used to. Sure. And I think that ultimately I think we'll have to get back to something like that, because the racing's probably not quite as exciting as it has been in the past. But it's quite a new thing, the hybrid. We're only in year 2. I think over the course of its lifespan, I think it'll get better.
Yeah, and it's going to evolve and it's going to change, and I'm sure it'll get back to where a lot of people want to see it. But I think it's great as it is, and everyone's saying it's a walkover. Well, it isn't, is it? It's never a walkover, especially not in the British Touring Car Championship. There's so many kind words coming in for Napa, saying you've all done brilliantly. The team's done superbly. The drivers have come on leaps and bounds. A lot of love out there. I can't read through them all because we're going to wrap up very shortly. But thank you everyone for all the lovely kind words for Napa and everyone else. Always like to wind down with some fun questions, just some little ones that hopefully don't involve too much brain power. Is there another motorsport series that you follow closely?
More than any others? I, like yourself, I'm IndyCar more than ever this season.
Is the right answer.
Just really just enjoying it, and in contrast to Formula One, shows everything what Formula One isn't. I think sometimes I'm just transfixed by it. And V8 supercars, I just think it's brilliant, and I love V8s. I think it's a great category with some great drivers, and I love the production quality. I watch it and just think how much I wish that we could get ITV to invest in some of the cool stuff these guys have got. We need more onboard cameras. We need more communication. We need to see more from behind the scenes. Like, there's so much stuff we could do. It's all budget related, but it just gives such a bigger picture of the day and the sport, and it'll bring the fans closer to it. I hope that's something that we can get to in the near future.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm so glad you said those two, because they're my two favourite series. I just want to say big thumbs up to Shane Van Gisbergen for going to Chicago and winning in NASCAR. That was absolutely unreal. That was
unbelievable. And I don't think there was a driver out there that didn't, from at every level, that didn't think that was an incredible feat. I think he's incredibly talented, clearly, and that will have opened a lot of eyes to what he can do in all kinds of different things.
Yeah, and he's eyeballing NASCAR for next year, apparently. So we'll see. Right. Is there a series that you'd love to try? Would it be one of those that you've mentioned?
Yeah, I think more than any other, I'd love to have a go in V8s. Really, I think that to me is kind of the pinnacle of the type of racing that I'm in.
Definitely.
Sort of that type of tin top. There's not many places you can drive your own car now. You know, you like the GT scene, obviously, as great as it is and can be. You kind of it's very much about the team. You know, you're one of two, one of three, one of four, whatever it might be. It's a different type of racing. You know, BTCC and V8s. Okay, I know they do the endurance bit, but majority it's your car. It's built around you. It's your team. There's not many places you can do that anymore. So, you know, for me, I would love to go in a V8. I have driven one. Someone mentioned the Shannon's Showdown.
Yes.
I did that in Australia back in 2013. It was a bit of a TV show that I got involved with, and the prize was a V8 drive. In the Super 2, which is the level below. So yes. I did get through to the part where you actually got to drive the V8. It's like 600 horsepower, I think they are. And I remember it wheel spinning in about fifth gear.
Wow.
It was cold in there when we drove it, but it was a brute of a machine. But you never know. I mean, this is obviously what's quite exciting about the relationship we have with Napa. And like you said when we started, when I found out it was Napa that was the sponsor, I couldn't sign quick enough, because you see what they do in the States and around the world in motorsport. They don't do it by half. If they're getting involved, they get properly involved, and you've seen that in the UK. But you know, hopefully, I think, you know, for myself, Ash, Dan, Sam, you know, we'd love to get the opportunity to do a few other things and maybe try different cars. You know, swap disciplines, bring people over to have a go at what we do, and you know, that's the opportunity that Napa has, because it's a global brand. So it could be quite exciting going forward.
Yeah, it could open a few doors. We'll see. Just very quickly, I saw a comment earlier on. I forget again. My apologies. I can't scroll all the way up. We all love the Napa livery, the yellow and blue. It looks brilliant on any car. Have you got a favourite livery from any of your cars that you have driven in the past, or do you have to say Napa?
I don't know. I mean, I think the Napa livery we have now, it does look very good. I must
awesome,
say.
Yeah.
What else? I mean, I'm trying to think what liveries I've had, and I'm also trying to think what liveries I've had that don't go against Napa. I can't really.
I liked your first one in the Porsches, the first full season. That's all I'm going to say.
I did.
I did like that one.
I did. The Porsche ones tend to be they were done by Andy Bell, SDS, who does a lot of the touring car graphics. He does a lot of graphics for the whole UK scene, but some of them were based on were sponsored by PPG, the paint company. So they were some of them were made to look like paint drops and things. So they were quite cool. Favorite livery? I don't think I have a favorite. You know, the fast ones usually are the ones I like.
Yeah,
it's like circuits. People say, "What's your favorite circuit?" Right now, it's Croft. So we're very fickle as drivers, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that was actually going to be the next question, but I'm guessing Croft is up there at the moment, and we can go with that.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's fine. And I'm guessing Spa as well. Everyone who's driven Spa loves Spa.
Spa is absolutely amazing. You know, if you ever get a chance to go, anyone who's not been, who's watching, should take an opportunity. It's not far. You can get there pretty quickly after the Channel Tunnel. What an amazing place! The size of it is what gets me every time I go. I went a few times last year coaching, and I'm awe of the size of it. It just goes on as far as you can see, off into the hills, and it's just an amazing place. And to drive, it's truly special.
Yeah, fantastic. One question I did say I'd ask. A guy called Dave Cox sent me a message. Can't tune in tonight, but he says, "What's your favourite race weekend memory that doesn't involve racing?" I guess it's whether it's a fan or a good laugh you've had or something like
that. That's a good question, actually. I'm sure I won't do this justice. If I thought about it, I'd probably get somewhere else. I mean, we do, like, this summer's been good fun. Like, we don't, obviously we get a summer break and we call it a break, but it's not much of a break. It's, you know, we all went to the British Grand Prix because we're members of the BRDC, so that was really good fun. Me, Ash, Dan, lots of other drivers. We get to spend a fair bit of time together. There's quite a lot of touring car guys there, so we all sat on a table and had a few drinks and a laugh. And you know, it's nice to spend time with people and not in a competitive environment, and just spend a bit more time together, really. Goodwood Festival of Speed is brilliant. We've got to do that the last couple of years with Napa, go up the hill, meet people, just generally, as I say, have just enjoy spending a bit of time together, like team building. And recently we just got back from Anglesey. Actually, we did a passenger laps for Napa and a few other people, and that's probably the most fun I've had in a car in forever. We started this by talking about karting and just driving around for the sake of it. That was a time where I really got to drive around. I think I sat in the car for about 3 hours, the touring car, with people getting in and out, and it was the most fun I've had in ages, because I got to drive for the sake of it, for the sake of driving. It was a beautiful day in Anglesey, sunny, and to watch people get out, absolutely elated at how good fun it was. Yeah. And it gives you a nice feel. Sometimes you can take that for granted when you're when you're doing it under pressure and the stopwatch is out. You sometimes forget that you're very privileged to get to do what you do. So that was a very nice day.
That's lovely. That's lovely. I mean, I had a hot lap in another touring car series car, another media day earlier, and you just come out laughing your head off, because it's just absolutely fantastic what you guys do. Yeah, great fun. It does hurt your stomach under braking though. Goodness me, I need some core work.
Yeah. I think the brakes are what shock most people. Touring cars, they're not, for the horsepower they are. There's lots of road cars these days that have that kind of horsepower, but there's not many that stop like a touring car does. When you really throw the anchor out, I think that's what takes most people by surprise is the force we can generate under braking. When you see people's heads go forward, it always makes them smile.
Kind of headbutt the glass. Yeah, it's brilliant. Right, this is the impossible question right at the end. Sorry, I can't get to all of your questions, folks. Thank you for all of them. I hope we've covered it all. Last one. I mean, you've raced against some amazing drivers. I always reel off a list here. I'm not going to do the whole lot, but you've raced, in various categories. You raced against people like Frederick Vervish, Scott Pye. You raced against Renger van der Zande, Philip Eng, Alex Lynn. You've even raced against Van Gisbergen, I think, in one race somewhere down the line. You raced again in the Formula Renault, I believe you said. It was in the you raced against like Stoffel Van Dorn, Daniel Kvyat, Nick De Vries, Gasly, Nick Tandy, Josh Cook, Blundell, Rory. You raced against Rory Butcher. You got Andrew Jordan, Jake Hill, Tom Ingram, Matt Neal, Plato, Turkington, Sutton. I mean, there's so many terrific drivers that you've raced against / with. Are there any that stand out as maybe not being the best, but someone who's just a bit special, someone who's just very, very, very good of all those?
No, absolutely. I think going from way back, I think it'd be, in fact, there's probably a few. I mean, you talk about like Nick Tandy. I'm a big fan of Nick, a friend of Nick's. He's just generally talented. Yeah. He could literally drive anything.
I think he's going to get an email from me soon.
He could drive anything better than just about anyone else. He's just brilliant, and he's a real success story, and someone you should have on, because he, when I knew him, the early days of JTR, when he was doing Formula Ford and then into Formula 3, he was still working for, I think it was Autoglass at the time, fitting windscreens.
Wow.
And now he's won Le Mans and he's a factory Porsche driver. You're talking about a guy, he's just so talented. He also still races Ford KAs in his spare time for fun. And he's regularly down the pub doing the darts. You just couldn't get a more normal bloke who's just ridiculously talented. So I'm a massive fan of Nick Tandy's. Don't mind saying that. I mean, Ash is brilliant. I've had one of the best teammates I've ever had and been up against. I think he's, he really is that good, and I'll say that to anyone. Mike Lammermuller was my teammate in Leitner Super Cup. He was just like a robot. He was brilliant. He was. I think he was the original or one of the first Red Bull juniors.
Right.
He was super talented. He wasn't far off F1. He broke his hand in a crash. And that kind of curtailed his F1 dream, and then he ended up in Porsches. But he was super mega. Who else? But there's a few, but they're certainly the ones that kind of stand out as just being that little bit, probably that little bit special.
Yeah, Fantastic. Just well, touching on another couple of comments just before we wrap up. Nice comment from Lisa Reinhard here. She's obviously seen this collection of hats that seems like it will come my way. She says, "Oh, can you please sort out Rich with a Napa cap to add to his collection? Appreciate the time and effort we all put into the live events, and that's me and you drivers as well." So that's lovely. Thank you, Lisa.
I'm sure we can do that.
Yeah, well, I'll come and find you.
As long as you wear it for your next one.
Oh yeah, go on. We've got a deal. And I did see one comment, which I'm going to finish on. I think it sums everything up. A guy called Chris Boak, who has been following the page ever since day one. So thank you for your support, Chris. He says, "I've met Dan a couple of times. Always a gent and a pleasure to talk to, and a great driver. Wishing you all the very best for the rest of the season." I think that's a perfect way to end this chat.
Cheers. No problem at all. No, it's been a pleasure. Thank you very much for having me on.
Well, thank you for for giving up most of your evening.
No.
And obviously, I guess you're off up to Knockhill tomorrow, or?
No, well, I could do, but I'd be a week early.
Oh, crikey! Yeah, sorry, it's next weekend, isn't it? Sorry,
there's a lot to see. There is a lot to see in Scotland.
Yeah, it's nice. Have a drive around, do a tour.
I think I'll be I'll be up there from sort of Thursday next week, and then
Thursday next week. Yeah,
Friday.
Yeah.
Do a bit of work with the Porsche coaching, and then onto our own weekend on Saturday, Sunday. So yeah, looking forward to it.
Good stuff. And I am going to reset my body clock because I'm obviously a week ahead of everyone else. And we're going to have someone joining us from Knockhill next week. Interesting. Thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in. Great to see all the comments and questions. I hope we've covered everything. Apologies if we haven't. And of course, biggest thanks to you, Dan. Thank you very, very much. Enjoy a relative weekend off. And obviously, we wish you and everyone at Napa all the best for Knockhill and for the rest of the season.
Cheers. Thank you very much.
Great stuff. And we'll catch up with you all very soon. Thanks very much, everyone. And we'll see you soon. Good night.